Yo, what's up, YouTube? So I'm doing a tier list for killers real quick, and this is, I say real quick, but this might end up being long. I didn't really plan this out. I didn't make any notes that I'm going to be looking at or nothing. I literally just pulled this up. I'm just going to wing this completely and see how it goes. I'm probably going to go into way less detail than last time. Last time I gave each killer a rating based on like the different aspects of the game and all that. But honestly, like, it's really hard to do that anyway. So I think I'm just going to wing it, and I'm just going to like look at each killer. I'm going to throw them in whatever tier I think they are. I'll like rant about them for a quick minute, and then at the very end, I'll maybe rearrange them based on any final decisions that I might have. And I'll at least have timestamps. That way you can maybe navigate to a killer that you want to see. But other than that, we're going to just completely wing this. Oh, also, I want to say real quick that this tier list is going to be based off the killer's potential, okay? Like their potential as far as if you completely master them, right? Like if you master this killer and you are insanely good with them, that's kind of how I'm basing this. I'm not basing it off your average character. So just to give a quick example, Nurse is the perfect example to give for this. An average Nurse player, like your average run-of-the-mill, you know, throw some random gamer on DBD, let him practice Nurse for a couple games, and then throw him on a tier list, they would be like D tier. Because like bad nurses are really easy to beat. But a god tier nurse, like spoiler alert, is going to be very, 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 very high up. So this is based off their potential as far as mastering them. So if you're somebody that's maybe like newer to the game, or maybe, you know, you're just not at like a super high level, some of this might not make a lot of sense, and that's okay. This is more about their potential rather than how you'll actually run into them on a daily basis. I can maybe make a tier list based off that too, but that would be a whole nother video. So I'm going to go in order, and we're going to start with Trapper. Trapper is, in my opinion, probably the worst killer in the game. So he's going into D tier. The reason why Trapper is so awful is because he is inconsistent. And I think consistency is such an important thing when it comes to being strong. Trapper really requires it requires a lot of time to set up, right? Like you need to take time to set up traps, which makes your early game weak, which is already bad because early game is when killers struggle the most, right? That's when you have no map pressure. That's also when the survivors have all the pallets up. So it's really, really bad to have a weak early game in general, and Trapper has probably the weakest early game. On top of the fact that you can basically set a bunch of traps, like you can have up to like 7 or 8 traps at a time, and even if you set all those traps, there's still a chance that the survivors will just not run to where you trap, no matter where you put them, right? Whether you put them directly in their pallets, directly under windows, like if you try to like, you know, get all cheeky and place them in grass around loops and stuff, there's always the chance that the survivors just don't run there. Or if you try to like herd them there by like chasing them in the right direction, there's a chance that they just don't do it, right? There's a chance they just eat the hit and then run far away. So it's very, very like RNG based. Sometimes as Trapper, you can pop off really, really well. Sometimes the survivors will do exactly what you think and they'll step in your traps and you can snowball like crazy. Like he has potential. Like when games go correctly, I think he has potential to be like low A tier maybe when they happen to like step in your traps at the correct times and all that. Like he has potential to be good, but it's just so luck based. It's so luck based, and I feel like anything that's that heavily luck based, it just has to be in the D tier for me, man. It's got to be in like the lowest of the low. I feel like the fact that it's so swingy and one game can go so well, another game can go so terrible means that like from a competitive point of view, he's just not very viable. Okay, up next, we got Wraithy Boy. Now, Wraith is a weird one, man. I think I'm going to put him in B tier for now. That feels right to me. B tier feels correct. He feels like he's real, like, middle of the pack. He has a lot of mobility, because when he goes stealth, he moves really, really fast. Obviously, he has stealth, so that works really well, especially for stuff like hit and run strats, for sneaking up on people to get a free hit. You could even use his cloak mid-chase to to move really fast and sometimes get in front of survivors to body block them away from windows and stuff. There's a lot of neat stuff you can do with the speed from his cloak, but at the end of the day, he is still basically an M1 killer. He did get some kind of major nerfs, like some direct ones and also indirect ones. In the last patch, they made it so that his speed boost when coming out of cloak is reduced a little bit, which does hurt him in chase a little. And also just the fact that Boon Circle of Healing is such a popular perk right now makes it so that hit and run strats are almost impossible, which is one of the more effective strats for Wraith. So honestly, it might not be crazy to put him into C tier just because of like the current meta being Circle of Healing, but I still feel like he maybe belongs in B. I feel like if you really are good with him, especially like I think he belongs in B. I think even with Circle of Healing, I think you can still probably catch people off guard healing, especially if you know roundabout where the boon is too. It could actually help you in some way because you know where to look for the healing survivors. So I think he belongs in B. He does a really good job of being under pressure of the map because of his mobility. The stealth makes him able to sneak up on people and get like at least one free hit usually, and then all you got to do is follow with one more hit. But he's definitely not deserving of A or S tier. This is one of those killers where when everyone in the game is average, like if it was an average killer going against a bunch of average survivors, he could be S tier, honestly, because he's very, very good at like kind of punishing survivors for mispositioning, and a lot of like average survivor players misposition. But if we're talking like high level gameplay, very good level, like very good survivors won't misposition very often, and they'll also know how to loop really well, which is where he suffers, is getting looped. So he's one of those killers where he'll stomp on your average group of survivors, but if you ever run into a group of survivors that are actually really, really good, he'll probably get stomped. So I think he goes in about B tier. That sounds about right to me. Okay, up next is Billy. Billy, I think goes, I'm pretty confident that he goes in A tier. He is pretty solid still. The overheat nerf that they gave him a while back did not affect him that much. He still can use his chainsaw quite a lot. He still has a lot of curve potential. Obviously, he has one-shot downs, which is huge, right? Anyone that has one-shot downs obviously has the potential to snowball really, really hard. He also is one of the most mobile killers in the game, if not the most mobile killer in the game, with his ability to go insanely fast and go the whole way across the map, which is also really insane. So like mobility plus the ability to one-shot down is insane. This is another killer where, again, if you're good with him and you're going against like average survivors, you will just wreck face. Like you will just destroy them. Like you'll snowball so fast. However, I feel like similar to Wraith, although a little bit less, he's just kind of loopable. Like if you really understand Billy gameplay, if you're a survivor player who really understands Billy gameplay and you really know how he plays, you know, how curves are set up, you know, like if you can kind of read what a Billy's doing based off his movement, you can very, very easily avoid chainsaws and kind of force him into either A, kind of trying to make plays forever that don't work, or B, kind of force him into an M1 play style, which takes away a big part of his power, which is the one-shot downs. So I think I would put him in A tier. I don't think he belongs in S tier, but I do think he's better than the killers I'm going to be putting in B tier. He's definitely like an above average, pretty good killer, but not God tier. Okay, moving along to the Nurse. The Nurse is literally the best killer in the game. So she's going top S tier. She's the best killer in the game. She's literally been the best killer in the game since her release. Nothing has ever changed that, and I don't think anything ever will change that. She's fucking insane. She literally can just teleport on top of your face. Like if you're within, I don't know, like maybe like 15 meters of a good nurse, she's going to hit you every single time. The only way to avoid being hit by a good nurse player is to basically have like over 15 meters of distance and then also break line of sight and then also get lucky and hope that they don't predict what you're going to do. It's like 3 different things are required. And if any of those 3 things aren't met, then you're getting hit every single time by a good nurse. I'm talking a really good nurse, by the way. Nurse is one of those killers where her skill ceiling is really, really high. So like there's a big difference between like an okay nurse player and like a good nurse player. And honestly, I would say there's even a big difference between a good nurse player and like the best nurse player in the world, right? Like it's really hard. Like it's not difficult to like know what to do, but to have like the reaction speed to be able to react to whatever the survivors do and nail the perfect blinks, especially like your second follow-up blink, is tough. Like it's honestly very, very tough. It takes a lot of mechanical skill. It takes a lot of reaction time. It takes a lot of muscle memory. It's hard. It's very, very hard. And if you ever go up against one of the best nurses in the game, you trust me, you'll know what I'm talking about when you say that there is nothing you can do. As far as I'm aware, when you're up against a nurse that's that good, usually the strategy is just going, hey, I'm gonna die, so let me just choose a good place to die. So you'll like run to a corner away from all your teammates and be like, this looks like a good place to die, and you just let yourself die there. Like she's so good that the strategy is just choosing where to die. Like it's crazy. Again, this is something, though, where if we're talking about your average players, she would be way lower. Like, she'd be down here if we're talking about your average players. But we're not. We're talking about their potential. And she is insane as far as potential. Also, while I was editing this video, I forgot about something as well that I wanted to mention, and that's the fact that Nurse has mobility. She's insanely mobile. I kind of talk about this on other killers a lot, and I kind of just forgot to mention it while I was recording, but she can teleport through walls, which means that usually when you have to go around like solid walls with other killers, she doesn't. She can just go right through it. And she's especially mobile on maps that have multiple floors, things like the game, stuff like Midwich. Her mobility is actually insane. So even though she's kind of slow, the fact that she just ignores all solid objects makes her actually one of the more mobile killers in the entire game. So she's definitely top of S tier, no doubt. She also ignores all pallets windows. I mean, that's a whole other thing I need to say, right? It doesn't matter where you're at on the map. It doesn't matter how strong of an area you are. She ignores everything. She blinks right through everything. She does not really deal with pallets or windows. She somewhat deals with pallets, somewhat. But a good nurse will know how to blink in a way where she doesn't have to deal with them, basically. Like, the only time she deals with pallets is if you blink directly into a pallet and then, like, it gets thrown. But a good nurse can avoid that as well. So just insane. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can use against her. Flashlights can kind of work if you have, like, a teammate that can burn her, or maybe if you, like, turn a corner and then hold a flashlight at the corner. Which, I mean, I could talk more about, but there's very, like, little room for minor counterplays, but it's essentially none. There's essentially no counterplay other than getting far the fuck away, and then when she's close, just choosing a good place to die. So it's rough. She's definitely the best. No questions asked. I don't think this can even be argued. I think anybody that disagrees with this, this is a bold statement maybe, but honestly, it's probably not even that bold. I think anybody that disagrees with this is honestly just flat out wrong. I don't even think it's a matter of opinion. I think it's literal fact that Nurse is the best killer in the game. So anyway, moving on. Okay, next up is Myers. I think Myers... Oh, this one's tough. This one's tough. What is C tier for? I'm not sure. He's either C tier or D tier. I haven't really decided in my head what C tier is for. Like, I think he might go in C tier. Like, it's going to be very hard to distinguish some people between C and D tier. I definitely know he belongs in one of these. He's definitely not B tier. Oh, man, I don't know. Okay, so here, I'm going to discuss it out loud, and then I'll try to decide. So Myers has a really weak early game, kind of like Trapper. Like I said earlier, how having a weak early game is really bad, because, again, it's when survivors are at their strongest. It's also when you need pressure as killer because you have none, right? In the mid game, you usually have some pressure because, you know, you're usually getting hooks, you're chasing people. In the early game, you have nothing. So you really, really, really need to, you know, like, get some pressure quickly. The benefits, though, are that he does get a one-shot down, right, in his tier 3. He also has insane add-ons. I didn't really discuss how add-ons are going to play a role here. I guess I'm just going to, like, assume that you're running, like, decent add-ons to good add-ons. His add-ons are fucking insane. Like, he has some of the craziest add-ons in the game. Even in tier 3 is nuts. Tombstones are fucking... Like, Purple Tombstone is bonkers good, dude. The ability to just kill someone... Like, it's like tunneling on crack. It's like instead of having to tunnel someone out of the game and deal with all the unhooks and deal with all the borrowed times and decisive strikes, you just fucking murder someone, dude. You just straight up murder them. Like, what? It's insane. It's so good. So his add-ons are pretty nuts. Just because of his add-ons alone, I think I'm going to keep him in C tier, honestly. But even without, like, the crazy, like, add-ons, like, being able to kill someone, even in tier 3 is really good. Just being in tier 3 is really good. You get one-shot downs, you get an extended lunge, even if it's only a little bit. And you also get faster vaults. I think the faster vaults is the big deal. He also gets faster vaults even while in tier 2, which is nice. So, I don't know. So just to talk about his pros, he's a semi-stealth killer. When he's in tier 2, he goes 4.6 movement speed, which is the same as, like, standard killers, like, you know, like Billy, Trapper, Wraith. So he goes normal movement speed while he's in tier 2, but he only has a 16-meter tear radius, which means he can kind of be a stealthy killer while also being fast, which is really, really nice. So he kind of has some stealth options. When he's in tier 3, he has one-shot downs, which gives him some snowballing options, right? Especially when it comes to, like, unhooks, especially when it comes to, like, basement unhooks, but even just unhooks in general. His tier 3 can be really, really dangerous and can lead to some crazy snowballing. His vault speed is actually really, really strong. I think it's a bit underrated, and you can do some really, really good vaulting mind games. Where you basically vault really fast when a survivor doesn't expect it and then catch them off guard and then get enough distance to one-shot down them. But I will say that really, really, really good survivors do know to look out for that. So it's not, like, crazy strong, but it's definitely very solid. It's definitely, like, an extra step of mind games that they have to look out for. But again, it's just how slow he is, man. The early game is rough. Like, the early game and, like, getting to tier 2, getting to even tier 3 just takes so long. In tier 1, he's hard countered by Spine Chill. A good survivor that has Spine Chill, like let alone 4 good survivors that have Spine Chill, will take forever to get to tier 2. It's a struggle. I think the tier 1 builds are not really viable against any kind of remotely good survivors. He is a fun killer. I will say that he's a fun killer, especially if you're newer to the game. He's very, very fun. So, you know, again, don't get discouraged. If you're newer to the game and you're like not sure who you want to play and you're seeing him on this tier list and you're like, oh man, don't get discouraged. He is very fun and he's very effective against average players. Again, if this was like an average player tier list, he'd be up there somewhere. But against good players and like his potential against, you know, high level play, I would say C tier. Yeah, I think C tier is where he belongs. Add-ons are good. He has some potential for plays. He has some potential for snowballing. But generally speaking, good survivors are just going to play safe. They're going to watch out for the mind games. They're going to watch out for his stalking. They're going to just loop him forever. I mean, at the end of the day, he's very, very loopable. Like he's just a glorified M1 killer that just has some extra bells and whistles, and that's it. So he's staying in C tier. That's where he goes. Okay, next up is Hag. This one might be a bit of a hot take because I know a lot of people consider Hag to be very, very high tier. I'm putting her in A tier. I will put her above Billy. I do think she belongs above Billy, though. I'm going to try to put them in order in each tier. I do think she belongs above Billy. The thing about her is a lot of people consider her to be S tier, and I disagree. And this might take a bit of an explanation, so let me rant for a minute. So I think the reason why people put her in S tier is because the play style of high level hags is, first off, usually they like rebind their teleport to their scroll wheel on their mouse, which means that they can just basically instantly teleport. They essentially are constantly scrolling their scroll wheel and they teleport before the notification even pops up that a trap was triggered. Like you're there before you can even realize that a trap is set off. So you get basically free hits when anyone steps in a trap. It's almost impossible to avoid being hit once you step in a trap. Almost. The key word there being almost. So because of that, the way most good hag players play is they'll just kind of take like maybe like an entire third of the map and they'll just set up a gigantic web of traps all around that third of the map. And usually that third of the map will have 3 or 4 generators in it. So like it's not like you can just avoid it as survivor. You eventually have to go in there. And when you do go in there, there will be traps set every fucking where. And if you step in one, you get hit, right? And it happens almost guaranteed. And also, her hook play is phenomenal. She has one of the best, plays around hooked survivors in the entire game because she can set you on the hook. She can place traps around your body. She could also run things like make your choice. And then you have very, very, very little options on how to go about it, right? Say she like sets you on a hook with make your choice and then places traps around your body and then she gets out of range, right? If you guys maybe are newer and you don't know what make your choice is, it's a perk where when someone gets unhooked more than, was it 36 meters away? I think it's 36 meters away. Or is it 24? Hold on. Yeah, it is 32 meters. I'm embarrassed I even had to look that up. But anyway, the way it works is that if someone unhooks more than 32 meters away, the person that actually got the unhook becomes exposed, which means they're one-shot downable for the next 60 seconds. So it's like a minute of them being one-shot downable. So if you're a hag and you put someone on a hook and then you put like multiple traps around the hook, like maybe even just like 2 or 3, it puts the survivors in this really weird scenario where like, what do they do, right? The hag can leave and go like more than 32 meters away. And then if you step in a trap near the hook, she'll teleport instantly there. And then bam, she's there to either like get the grab or to like basically 1-for-1 trade, right? To like hit you as you're unhooking and then hit you again to put you on the hook, right? Like it's usually either a hook trade or a grab or something if you set off the traps. If you don't set off the traps, if you try to like crouch walk in and get the hook and then crouch walk out, you'll become exposed. And then the whole time you're crouch walking away from the hook, she'll be coming back to the hook and she'll basically get to you by the time you're out of range of the traps, and then she'll be able to one-shot down you. Really, the only effective counterplay in that situation is a flashlight and flashlighting the traps away and then getting the unhook. And that's kind of unreliable, right? Like you kind of need a flashlight just to get out of the scenario without having someone else get put on the hook. So her hook play is insane. Very, 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 very good. Also, just her general ability to hold down one side of the map is also very, very strong. And I will say that she's the type of killer where like one mistake can kind of snowball the game out of control really badly, especially against like, you know, an average group of survivors or even just like a slightly above average group of survivors. One mistake can snowball out of control super fast. Like all it takes is maybe one survivor getting grabbed on the unhook, you know, after stepping in a trap or something, and then the whole game just goes downhill. You know, 2 people get hooked, they both have traps on their hooks. you know, not only that, when a hag hooks somebody, they usually hook them in their web. So even running up to the hooks, like you'll very often step in traps and get hit. So like that's the thing as well. Like even getting to the hooked survivors is sometimes very difficult because they'll usually be hooked deep into the web of traps. So as soon as the hook situations come in and it starts to snowball out of control, that's when it starts to get really, really, really crazy. And yeah, it's really, really nuts. So the ability to play around that situation is really where the difference between being in like S tier and A tier comes in. But here's the thing: good survivors do have counterplay. There's a couple things. There's a couple different things you can do against Hag. First off, flashlights are a nightmare for Hag. Good survivors that have flashlights will just completely dump on a Hag. Which, if we're talking about like your average public matches, then yeah, I mean you'll run into flashlights quite a bit. If we're talking about like competitive tournaments and stuff, then there's usually restrictions against that. But I mean, if we're just talking about general gameplay, flashlights do exist. They do cuck your power over really, really hard. So that's definitely a big issue. But even without flashlights, if you see a if you see a hag is setting traps, you can kind of mess with her really easily. I would say, I don't want to say every single hag because obviously there's probably going to be some exceptions here. But every single hag I've ever played against ever will always swing the second they teleport. I've never seen a hag like basically teleport to a trap and then wait a second before swinging. It never happens because usually if you do that, you're giving the survivor enough distance to get away from the swing. But based on the fact that hags swing instantly every single time, what you can do is if you know where a trap is, you can kind of do like little spins on the very edge of the radius. And essentially, you can set off the trap while keeping momentum going away from the trap by doing spins. Does that make sense? It might be something that I have to show you, but essentially, you can set off a trap while running away from it. And when the hag teleports and goes to swing, you'll be just out of range. So that's what I meant by almost being able to avoid the hit every single time. Or sorry, that's what I meant by saying the hag can get hits almost every single time when teleporting. Because the majority of the time, you're not going to be doing that, right? Like the majority of traps that are stepped in, the survivors aren't expecting it. They're just holding W. They can't react in time to like start running away. And usually when you teleport, you just instantly get a hit. But if you know a trap is there, you can kind of do like little spins on the outside circle and kind of like set the trap off, bait the hag into teleporting to it, make her miss her swing, and then run away to a powder window. And then it forces her to reset the trap and then leave. And then you can just kind of keep doing it. You can kind of like, quote unquote, hold the hag hostage by making her just come back to her trap over and over again and replace it. Or just find another trap and do the same thing, right? Like you can really have a dedicated survivor really mess with the hag and really mess up her web and mess up her power by just setting off her traps and making her teleport and like without getting any actual value. And then your other teammates can be doing gens or doing whatever the hell they need to do. The other major weakness I would say is that hag cannot teleport to her traps while she's carrying survivors. And this is a big thing that a lot more people need to realize. If you guys are playing against a hag player ever as survivor and she picks up a survivor and is carrying them to the hook, literally run the fuck around and just set off every single trap. Just set them all off. Any trap that you know where it's at, just run and set it off. Because it takes her a long time to set up traps, right? Like it's not, I shouldn't say a long time, but it takes her time to do it, right? Like she has to take the time to set up the web of traps. And if while she's carrying a survivor, like hypothetically, just a hypothetical scenario, like this will obviously be a bit of an extreme one, but say a hag sets up like 9 traps, a survivor runs into like a couple of them and gets downed. And then she picks that survivor up and she's carrying them to a hook that's like maybe like a little bit far away. If like all 3 survivors step in maybe 1 or 2 traps, that eliminates somewhere between 3 and 6 traps. She's then left with like 2 traps down, right? After she gets that hook. She then has to go around and set all the traps again, which is a huge time investment. And also during that time investment, you could be making plays like getting unhooks and stuff. Like the time investment that you lose as a hag player whenever someone actually like goes around and steps in all your traps during a carry is huge, and it messes with you really, really bad. So again, it's very hard. Survivors really need to know what they're doing. They really need to be on top of their game because one big mistake will wipe you out completely. That's all it takes is one slip up and you're all dead. So she's very, 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 very strong. She definitely belongs. I don't think anyone's going to kick her out at the top of A tier. I don't think. We'll see. But I think she's going to stay at the very top of A tier because she's close to being the bottom of S tier to me. But I think she's going to go top of A. There is counterplay that you can do if you're good at her. And I think a good hag going up against a really, really, really good squad of survivors is still going to suffer. And again, especially if they have flashlights. I think the flashlights thing is also a really, really big part of this, right? If the survivors have flashlights and they're good, you're gonna suffer a lot. So she's staying in A tier. She's not S tier, but she is definitely way above the rest. She's miles above B tier. She's gonna be above most of the people in A tier as well. So yep, that's my opinions on hag. Up next is Doctor. I think Doctor belongs in. Ooh, this one's tough. Ooh. This one's oof. B tier. He's going B tier. Is he above or below Wraith? I don't know. I'll do the thing again where I just like kind of think out loud, and then I'll maybe see where I put him. So Doctor is an interesting killer because he is kind of a killer that can basically hit you no matter what. He's kind of oppressive. Like, he's kind of a killer that can't really be looped at all. Like, if you know how to time your shocks, you can basically hit survivors no matter what. Like, it's just a matter of catching up to them and shocking them at the right moments and then eventually getting the hit. But, which sounds similar to like Nurse, right? Who I put in S plus tier. Like you might be like, oh, that sounds a lot like Nurse. Like, Nurse is a killer that can basically hit you no matter what. And that's kind of her whole strength, right? Is that she can hit you no matter what. But with Doctor, the problem is just that it takes so long, dude. It just takes so freaking long. Like, the problem is that in order to be oppressive, you have to shock people to stop them from throwing pallets. So, for instance, if someone's looping you, you have to shock them right before they get to the pallet every single time to stop them from dropping the pallet. But the issue is that you slow down when doing the shock. So you're kind of like, you're not gaining a crazy amount of distance every time. Sometimes around big loops, sometimes you have to shock a survivor 3 times before you even get the hit. And you do like 3-4 loops around the pallet before you even get a single damage state. So it takes a long time, right? Like, you can get hits no matter what, but the amount of time it takes to get those hits is just brutal. And when survivors are really, really hard focusing gens, sometimes it's so brutal that you end up losing the game because, you know, you are getting downs, but the downs are just taking so long that gens are getting done, and it's very, very tough. On top of the fact that there actually is some pretty good counterplay, like reliable counterplay. He's not anywhere near as oppressive as Nurse in the sense that if you just pre-drop pallets, especially really strong pallets, he's actually quite weak. So, you know what? Maybe comparing him to Nurse wasn't the best idea. He's actually quite weak when you pre-drop pallets. Like, if you have like a pallet where both sides are pretty long and you just pre-drop it, there's not really a lot that a Doctor player can do. So it kind of ends up suffering a bit in that regard. So, like, if he ever ends up snowballing, right? Like, if you ever end up getting in a situation where you're snowballing, survivors can kind of stop your snowball by just pre-throwing pallets, playing really safe, buying a lot of time. He just doesn't really like. Again, against your average random ragtag group of survivors, he would probably be way up here somewhere. But honestly, dude, maybe he even goes in C tier. I don't know. The thing is, too, that he has a lot of other built-in things. Like, he has, like, his static blast that can reveal survivors around him and make them scream, which is really, really good for tracking. He has a lot of built-in tracking with his Doctor Illusions, his add-ons. He has some pretty good add-ons, too. The ones that have the constant red stain are really, really good. The Doctor Illusions give you a lot more tracking. There's a lot of things that he does that are good, on top of the madness kind of being a built-in slowdown too, right? When you get someone to madness 3, they have to break themselves out before they can do anything, which is sort of like a built-in slowdown, although it's not very much. It barely counts as slowdown. It's definitely not very effective slowdown, but it's something, right? It's there. So I guess with all of that, right, the tracking, the slowdown, the fact that he can be oppressive in a lot of scenarios, I think I'm going to keep him in B tier, but I think I'm going to keep Wraith above him because Wraith's mobility and his ability to, like, be stealthy, I think, is a little bit more valuable at, like, higher level, but it's close. I would say it's very, very close. I think it can go either way. Like, I don't think it'd be crazy to do this, but I think I'm going to do this for now, and we'll see. Maybe I'll come back to it later. Okay, up next is Huntress. Now, Huntress is a killer that I'm pretty confident is A tier, but, like, where in A tier? I think I would fit her right in between, but honestly, you can maybe make an argument for this. Like, you can maybe make this argument to me and say that she's top of A tier. I don't think she belongs in S tier. I do think there is some, like, I don't want to say clear-cut counterplay, but like, kind of clear-cut counterplay to her. But also the counterplay tour is very difficult, and also the counterplay tour is also very map specific, and it's also like very dependent on where you are on the map. So It's tough, man. It's tough. I think I'm gonna put her in A tier. And again, we'll discuss her pros and cons, and I'll maybe think about it, and maybe I'll move her. But I think that's where she goes. So her pros are that obviously she has ranged attack. She has hatchets that she can throw. Her skill ceiling is insanely high. I'm a bit like unsure at her total skill ceiling because it's so high. There's so many like objects you can throw through. There's so much stuff you can do. There's so many zoning mind games you can do just by holding your hatchet out. There's so much to her. It might seem simple, like, oh yeah, you just throw hatchets, but there's honestly so much to her. And it's really, really, really hard to like imagine a perfect game of Huntress where no mistakes are made, because there's just so many opportunities to make plays happen if you like predict correctly, if you play perfectly. So it's hard. I will say, generally, as a survivor, if you're being chased by a Huntress and you make it to like a high wall loop, you can pretty much shut her down. I wouldn't say shut her down completely, but you can do really well against Huntress at like a high wall loop. Something like a Maze Tile or like Shack or something. You can do pretty well against Huntress as a good survivor. The problem is that when you're at low wall loops, like the type of loops that are just kind of like scattered about, you know, like around random Azerov's maps or Macmillan maps, like those kind of like low wall maps that she can throw over top of are just death. They're literally just death. If you're stuck there against a Huntress, you are getting hit 100% of the time. Like you can try to juke and stuff, but assuming her aim isn't bad, you're hit every time. So it's weird because I feel like in half of the area of a map she's oppressive, and in the other half she has counterplay. So it really depends on your positioning, and it depends on where you are. But there is counterplay, like I said, and I feel like the S tier is more for people where there's very little counterplay, and the counterplay is essentially choosing places to die and stuff like that. That's usually what's going to be up in S tier. So I think she belongs in A tier because of her counterplay. She also, even though she's really strong, she has range. She is slow. She's very, very slow. She's only 4.4, so she moves slower than everybody else. And she also has to reload, you know, every 5 hatchets, or maybe up to like 7 or 8, depending on how many add-ons you have. And that's brutal, man. The fact that she has to stop at a locker, go through like a 3-second animation just to like get her power back is brutal, man. Like survivors can just run away while you're doing it and get so much distance on you. So she's very, very punishing if you miss your hatchets, but she also has one of the best snowball potentials in the whole game. Like the fact that you can hit people from range means that it's possible to get multiple hits on multiple different survivors very, 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 very quickly. She also recovers from her hatchets really fast, so her like basement play is incredible. Like if you catch someone trying to unhook someone in the basement, you can hit them with a hatchet, follow up with another hatchet, follow up with an M1. You can get so many hits in such a short amount of time because of how fast her recovery is from hatchets. So her unhook play is nuts. Her general like map presence is pretty nuts because she can, like, you have to, against a good Huntress, you have to be aware all the time of the potential of being cross mapped. There's a lot to her, right? Like there's a lot of benefit to it. It's just the downsides are definitely there as well, right? Like I feel like she's very hit or miss. I feel like Huntresses either dominate or they kind of get shit on, is usually how it usually ends up going. So I don't know. I think she goes in A tier. I would consider her to be the most fun killer in the game at this moment. I used to say it was Billy, but my opinion on Billy has changed a lot over the years. And honestly, that might even be worth a whole video in itself. But Huntress, I think, is the most fun killer. I think she's really neat for both sides. I like playing as her. I like playing against her. I think she's honestly pretty balanced overall, and I think she's really fun. And I do think she's very, very strong. I think she's probably second place in A tier. She might stay there. I don't know if someone will get between her and Hag, but I think that's where she belongs. She's very, very, very good. Okay, up next, we got Leatherface. Good old Bubba. Bubba's a weird one, man. I need to, like, really think about this. I think he's going to go in either B tier or A tier. Like, I think last tier list, I put him in A tier, and I think he might still belong there. But I need to think about this out loud before I really figure it out. I'm going to put him here for now. Okay, so the thing about Bubba is he's kind of nuts because his ability to go through pallets is insane. There's kind of this thing you can do with Bubba where, like, as you're coming up to a pallet, you can rev your chainsaw, and then the survivor kind of has this, like, lose situation, right? Like, they either don't throw the pallet, and then you chainsaw right through it, and you kind of, like, the thing about Bubba is that while you're using his chainsaw, assuming you know how to, like, turn corners without colliding with them, and also assuming you know the timing of when to refresh your charges, you can kind of just run, like, you have free movement. You have literal free movement while chainsawing, and you're also going really fast. You're going like 5.0, I think is what your speed is, which is like faster than Bloodlust 3. Like, you go really wait, no, actually that's not faster than Bloodlust 3. I think Bloodlust 3 is 5.2, I think. But anyway, you go like about the speed of Bloodlust 3 while chainsawing. Like, it's nuts, and having free movement. So like, for instance, if you're riding a chainsaw up to a pallet and a survivor doesn't drop it, you can just start chainsawing and chase after them with your chainsaw, and you go insanely fast, and you will most likely catch them as long as you don't fuck up, right? If they do throw the pallet, then you just break the pallet. You break the pallet and you only lose one charge, and that one charge comes back really fast, and then you can do the exact same thing at the next pallet. Because also, you break the pallet really, really fast. Chainsawing a pallet is like, it's like brutal strength 30. It's insane. I don't even know like what the actual times are. I wonder if I could find it. Okay, I couldn't find the actual numbers, but it's got to be like at least twice as fast. Like, it's so fast. You break pallets so insanely fast. So like, the survivors get less distance because of how quickly you break the pallets, and you also still maintain a lot of your charges. So basically, the next pallet they get to, they have to also immediately throw that most of the time. So basically, as Bubba, you get in these weird situations where the survivors either have to just like throw every pallet and just destroy them all super quickly, or like risk potentially eating a chainsaw if you don't mess up. Like, you get into some really hairy situations with Bubba, and I feel like he's actually kind of insane. Obviously, he has a one-shot down with his chainsaw, which is also nuts. Like, that leads to potential snowballing situations. He's also the single best face camper in the game. It's literally impossible to save against the Bubba that's standing there with his chainsaw. You literally cannot do a single thing. So obviously, his like unhook play is I still think Hag's unhook play might be the best, because I feel like Hag baits you into getting into unhooking and then fucking you over more. Whereas with Bubba, you know, you look at a Bubba who's camping a hook and you're like, I literally don't even want to try, right? So I don't know. I still think Hag might be better overall in the unhook scenario than Bubba, but like, he's obviously the best at denying unhooks. So you can straight up just deny unhooks with Bubba forever. Like, it's nuts. It's absolutely insane. So he's obviously really good there too, but I think his overall just chase potential is really insane as well. Like, I think he has a really, really good chase game. I think he destroys pallets. I think you get in a lot of scenarios where he's in kind of total control in chase, and I think when you play him perfectly, he's very, very difficult, especially if you bring perks like Bamboozle that make windows impossible so that you only play pallets. Then it ends up being pretty insane too. So, you know what? Yeah, I think when I'm looking at the killers that I put in B tier, he's definitely better than them. Like, he's definitely better than Wraith and Doctor for sure. I think he's going in A tier. He might be in the bottom of A tier though. Like, if I put more people in here, they might go in between Billy and Bubba, because I do think Billy's better. And yeah, I think he's in A tier. I think he's been A tier. He's definitely very, very strong. I don't think there's much else more to say about him, right? There's nothing really too complicated about Bubba. He just runs at you and chainsaws you. That's really it. But his chainsaw the buffs to his chainsaw he got like maybe like a year or two ago has made him really, really nuts. And honestly, I think he might be kind of slept on a bit. He's actually a very, very strong killer in chase. Okay, next up is Freddy. Freddy's in a weird place right now. I feel like he got like a kind of minor nerf, and then everyone just stopped playing him. Like, I remember Freddy was like, I remember everyone used to call Freddy OP. Like, everyone called him OP and said he was nuts and said he was like overpowered, and people were putting him like really high in tier lists and stuff. And then like he got like a super minor nerf. Like they just made it so that when he was setting snares, he gets slowed down a little bit. He goes to like 4.0 or something when setting snares. I think that's the only change they even made, right? I might be forgetting something, and maybe everyone's yelling at their screen right now. I'm not sure. But I think that's the only change he even got. And everyone was like, oh, he's dead now. He's dead. Just forget him. And like, now no one's playing him. It's really weird. I honestly don't think, I think even before the nerf, I don't think he was that good. I think he was super overrated. And I guess now he's maybe correctly rated since no one's playing him. I think he's about B tier, honestly. I don't think he's good enough to be A tier. I think I'll put him... Ooh, him and Wraith are close. I think he's better than Doctor, but him and Wraith are very close, honestly. They're very, very close. Okay, so his pros and cons. His pros are he has a really, really good chase. In the sense I'd say it's kind of like Doctor 2, though, in the sense where, like, you can counterplay it really easily by pre-throwing pallets. And also, it kind of takes a while, right? It's a mix of like A, it takes a while, and B, you can counterplay him really easily by pre-throwing pallets. As far as snares go, I think his pallets, like if you're using dream pallets, I think that sucks. I think like if I was saying dream pallets, I might put him like, well, I'd probably put him like here. But I think with dream snares, he probably goes here. And yeah, it just kind of takes a while. You can counter them by pre-throwing, but they are really strong. They basically force you to pre-throw, I think. If you don't pre-throw pallets against a Freddy who actually knows how to use his snares, he can basically get almost guaranteed hits on almost every single loop. So you have to either pre-throw or you have to just hold W. He also has really good mobility with his teleport. He can teleport to gens, which gives him really good mobility. He could also use that mid chase sometimes to cut people off and do different mind games to try to like push you into him. So he has some potential there as well, but really at the end of the day, he's pretty easily countered. Like survivors that know what they're doing can counter him pretty much just as easy as these guys. You just pre-throw pallets, you play safe, you just slam gens. It's really not too much of a concern. He's really not that strong. Again, he's probably better than like C tier killers. He's probably slightly better. Again, you can even make arguments for Wraith and Doctor being better, but I would say he's maybe like a hair better than these guys. Definitely not as good as these guys, though. I think B tier is where he belongs. He has some pretty clear-cut counterplay, but his pros are still there as well. Okay, up next, we got Piggy. Piggy is another killer that I think is a little bit underrated, but also not a lot underrated. I do think she's kind of bad. The thing about Pig is that I feel like if this was maybe like a year or two ago, I would say, oh yeah, her dash is actually underrated and it's actually really strong. Learn to use her dash. It's actually really useful. But these days, I feel like the meta of DBD is just holding W. Like motherfuckers just hold W. No one even tries to loot pallets anymore. You either get good survivors that know what they're doing and those survivors hold W, or you get bad survivors who just throw every single pallet they get to anyway without looping it, right? Like very few people are like actually looping pallets these days. So your dash is a lot less useful because your dash is really only useful when people loot pallets. I guess it actually can be useful for when people camp pallets too, but I would say the thing I'm trying to get at here is that good survivors will shit on you is essentially what I'm saying. Pig can do well against kind of mess survivors at pallets, but if a survivor knows what they're doing, there's not really anything that you can do against her at a pallet. She's basically just a standard 4.6 killer. Her dash barely does anything. But with that in mind, her slowdown is actually really insane. Now, I want to put her in, I think, C tier. I think she goes in C tier. I don't think I would say she's as good as these killers. Now that I'm looking at this list, I'm wondering if Wraith even belongs in B tier. I'm gonna come back to that. But yeah, I think she goes in C tier. I would put her above Myers. I think her reverse bear traps are actually insane, though. I think a lot of people might not realize how strong it is. I mean, there's a lot of RNG involved, and it's really unfortunate how much RNG there is. But hypothetically, even if all 4 survivors get their bear trap off the very first try, it's still like a whole additional generator worth of time, basically. Like, they have to run to it, they have to fill up the bar, and then they have to run back to a generator that they'd be doing. If all 4 survivors do that, it's probably about 80 seconds of wasted time, which is the same as a generator. But also, there is the RNG aspect, right? It is possible that all 4 survivors might take all 4 boxes to take it off. And also, there's add-ons that add more boxes, and also add-ons to make it take longer, and add-ons do this, and that. So, like, the RNG involved is insane. Honestly, I wish they would rework Pig. I really do. I wish they would, like, not rework her, but I wish they would change her to make her more consistent. Ideally, I think in a perfect world, they would make a change so that, like, one bear trap was always taken off first try, one was always taken off second try, one was always taken off third try, and one was always taken off fourth try, but it was randomized, right? Like you didn't know which one was which. That way you always got the same like the same value out of all 4 of them, right? If you put all 4 of them on somebody, it would always get the same rough amount of value every time. That would be cool if they did that, but that's not a thing, right? That's a whole different topic I could talk about where they change Pig. Unfortunately, she's really inconsistent, which I know I said inconsistency makes you bad, so you might be like, Tofu, why are you not putting her in D tier? But even when you get the worst luck possible, it's honestly still a lot of value. Like it's still a really good built-in slowdown, right? It's like the equivalent of having a 5th slowdown perk or something, which is really strong. So I'm going to put her to the top of C tier. Her dash can still be useful against survivors that aren't very good. Her slowdown is fucking insane. She also does have built-in stealth as well, where she can kind of crouch and walk around and be stealthy, although it's not that useful because she goes super duper slow. And yeah, I think that's really it. I mean, outside of that, she's super loopable. I mean, her cons are pretty obvious. I think she's super loopable. She's essentially just an M1 killer outside of like her stealth that is also kind of bad, and like her dash, which is kind of bad. She's kind of just a basic M1 killer that just has to chase you down and hit you normally, which is really weak and super loopable. So yeah, Yeah, I think she's gonna go at C tier, but I think she is a little bit better than Myers just because of her built-in slowdown, right? Myers has a problem where he has like a slow early game and then he kind of ramps up, and then he can start snowballing if you get lucky, but also has a lot of counterplay. She at least like can get started right away, and she also has built-in slowdown. It's like I feel like with Myers you'll like lose half your objectives instantly, whereas with Pig you might lose half your objectives instantly, but then you'll add it back with bear traps, right? You'll lose 2.5 gens, but then you'll add 2.5 gens worth of time by just putting bear traps on people. So it's almost like you didn't lose it at all. So this could go either way. Again, I could switch these around and I wouldn't argue too much, but she's definitely somewhere down here. I'll put her at the top for now. Okay, next up is Clown. Clown is a sad boy. He's a sad boy. I think Clown either goes in D or C tier. I don't know which one. Let me think about this one too. Okay, so Clown is a killer that has bottles he can throw and they slow you down, but then he has to reload every like 4 bottles. He also has bottles that speed him up, but they also speed up survivors as well. I think he's a pretty interesting killer. He can be kind of fun. He has the same counterplay as like Doctor and Freddy, where you can pre-throw pallets and he basically can't do much of anything. But also like the fact that you can only use your power like 4 times where you have to reload sucks really hard. Actually positioning your bottles is sometimes really hard because you have to throw it like a projectile, which can be difficult. But assuming you're like really good at hitting your projectiles, you actually can slow people down quite a bit. I actually think a really good Clown should probably go at the top of C tier. I think. I don't quite think he's good enough to be up here in the B tier. I mean, maybe though, right? Maybe. I feel like if he just had something else, right? Like, I feel like he's similar to Doctor, but Doctor also has, like, a built-in slowdown. Same thing with Freddy. Like, I feel like he's similar to Freddy, but Freddy also has mobility. Like, I feel like if he had something else in his kit, he'd be up here with these guys. But I feel like he's just these killers, but without their like, additional thing, right? Like, he doesn't have an additional thing other than that he fucking laughs and is creepy. So, he's gonna go in C tier because, yeah, I mean, he has a pretty above-average chase. Right, he definitely has a better chase than these guys, but his chase is still pretty easily countered by pre-throwing pallets, and he just doesn't really have anything else going for him. Like, that's literally it. That's all he has is just an above-average chase. He's just a killer with an above-average chase. No stealth potential, no mobility. I mean, I guess you can say he has mobility by throwing his yellow bottles, but even then, if you throw yellow bottles for mobility, then by the time you find a survivor, you're, like, out of bottles. You have to reload. So even that, no. I don't even think that's a benefit, really. So... yeah, I don't know, man. I think he goes C tier. I at first I was thinking D tier, but I think a Clown that really knows what they're doing is actually pretty tough to go against, to an extent. So I'm gonna put him in C. Okay, next up is Spirit. Spirit's a weird one. I think I'm gonna go ahead and drop her in S for now. But she's a weird one because I don't really know. This one I'm actually very what's the word for being not confident? I'm not confident in it. I'm very skeptical. I don't know. I'm very skeptical on where exactly to put her. I feel like since her nerf, if you guys don't know, they nerfed her semi-recently, where now when she's phasing, you can hear like a directional sound of where she is in her phase. But the thing is that she still moves really fast. So like as a survivor, you can like run to a pallet and camp it, but she can start faking like she's going to come one way, get you to throw the pallet, and then like double back the other way and still get to the other side of the pallet in time, right? So, like, there's still a lot of good plays you can make with her. It's not like she's useless now, right? She can still play pallets really well. You still are kind of in these situations where you're kind of like 50-50 guessing. Guessing? I don't think guessing is a word. You're still in situations where you're like where you're kind of like 50-50 guessing. But honestly, I feel like old Spirit, you weren't even 50-50 guessing. I feel like old Spirit, you were like 10%, 90% guessing. Like, you were like 10-90 guessing. Like, you were... like, she was in pretty much total control, and you were just praying that you somehow guessed correctly. Whereas I feel like now with Spirit, you have like a 50-50, right? You have like a coin flip on whether you're guessing correctly or not, which is kind of a big deal, right? If you're winning, if you're winning the coin flip 50% of the time, that's enough to make her suffer a lot because she's very slow, she's very immobile, her power is kind of held back by like a pretty decent cooldown. Honestly, if she is an S tier, she's probably at the bottom of S tier now. I think she's still strong, but I don't think she's nearly as strong as she used to be, for sure. I think the nerf was actually decently significant at like a high level. But again, this is something I'm not confident in. I'm going to have to watch a couple more tournaments. I mean, I am hosting a tournament maybe like a week after I'm recording this. So maybe after the tournament that I host on my channel, maybe I'll have a better opinion. It's so hard for me to judge it though. It's too like I know it's been changed for a long time, but I just haven't really got enough experience as her as well as going against good spirits to really be able to say. But there's a chance, honestly, that she might belong here. Like, there's honestly a chance that she might belong here because of her change. But I think I'm going to leave her in S tier for now. But I got to be honest, this one's I'm very uncertain. I'm very, very uncertain. I guess I didn't really talk about her, right? I talked about her nerf, but I didn't really talk about her. Let me actually discuss her real quick. So Spirit's a killer that basically can, like, go invisible into her phase, and then she can just reappear somewhere and then down a survivor. She also gets a pretty big speed boost out of her burst too, which is, or out of her invisibility too, which is pretty insane. And she used to be so oppressive because you had no idea where she was going to reappear. So there's really no way for you to counterplay her. You would just kind of run around and hope for the best. Whereas now I feel like you have a general idea of where she comes out. But the idea is still that, like, you're still invisible and they still don't know exactly what you're doing, and you're still really fast while you're invisible. And you can kind of just, like, follow survivors. As long as you have, like, a good headset, as long as you have good sound, you can still follow survivors exactly, kind of figure out what they're doing, and then kind of counterplay it accordingly. I think a really good spirit player that has really, really good game sense and can also predict survivors and know what they're probably going to do will most likely still be able to get hits almost every single phase. And even though, again, she's kind of slow, like, she's not quite as slow as, like, Doctor, right? Like, I know I said, like, oh yeah, Doctor can almost guarantee hits, but he takes forever doing it. The thing about Spirit is that, first off, pre-throwing pallets doesn't really work that well unless it's, like, a really, really good pallet, like Shack pallet or something, maybe. And unless it's a crazy pallet like that, pre-throwing doesn't really do much, and even then, it's not, like, a guaranteed out. And even without pre-throwing, she still downs and gets hits way faster than Doctor, way faster than Freddy, way faster than Clown. Like, her cooldown isn't that bad. Like, Nurse's is better, right? Like, Nurse's has a way faster cooldown, but hers is definitely not bad. And I think a good Spirit player can still get guaranteed hits pretty consistently. And at the end of the day, if you're getting guaranteed hits, if you're getting downs very, very often, then you're going to be winning games, right? Like, that's how you stop gens from getting done, is by getting downs, forcing survivors off of gens to get unhooks or picking up people that are downed, right? Like, forcing the survivors into altruism is how you stop gens from getting done, and stopping gens from getting done is how you win the game. So killers like this that can get hits very, very quickly and efficiently are definitely top tier. So I think I'm going to leave her in S tier. Yeah, I think that's where she belongs. But again, not as good as Nurse. Nurse can do it faster. She also, now that Spirit got nerfed a little bit, Nurse can also do it more, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Consistently. Like, she's more consistent in getting her hits, right? Whereas Spirit, I feel like, is a bit of a coin flip sometimes these days. So Nurse is still miles above her, but she does belong in S, I think. Okay, next up is Legion. I mean, look out, Trapper. Look out, buddy. Scooch over. Scooch over, my friend. Legion's going straight to the D tier. Legion is pretty awful, especially if we're talking about, like, high level. Like, if we're talking about, like, very good survivors, Legion might be the only killer in the game. Let me think. Legion might be the only killer in the game where you have to down the survivor by just being a basic M1 chase killer and having nothing to actually help you in chase. Like, I'm talking nothing. Like, I'm even giving Ghostface his ability to crouch as far as giving him something in chase, right? And also his ability to go stealth, as I guess, is also good. I guess if you run Frank's mixtape, maybe it doesn't count, but Frank's mixtape is awful, so, like, don't ever do that. Frank's mixtape is not worth it. If you're using Frank's mixtape to get downs, then you might as well not even be playing killer. That shit takes forever. But outside of Frank's mixtape, yeah, I think they're the only killer that they actually have to just chase you down as a normal standard M1 killer with nothing else in their kit at all to help you get hits. And that sucks. Like, even Myers has faster vaults. Pig has her dash. Trapper has traps you can step in. Like, every other killer has something. Legion has nothing. Legion gets one hit for free with their frenzy, and that's it. And then you have to chase them down as a normal M1 killer. And here's the thing. Normal M1 killers are really weak against good survivors, right? Survivors that know maps, survivors that know how to play them, know how to play loops, can lead you on very long chases, especially if they want to play safe, right? Like, if they're not taking any risks, if they're just playing very, very safe, you can easily get run for 5 gens very, very easily. Like, it's very hard to get much done. Again, if this tier list was made for your average players, Legion would be up there, because Legion has a lot of tools that helps him against, like, your average ragtag survivors. He has good tracking when it comes to, like, using his power, right? He gets hits for free, so you can use perks like Thanatophobia. You also just get everybody injured for free, which is really nice. Like, your average survivor doesn't really know how to play maps perfectly, so you can catch them in mistakes and get downs, even though you're just a standard 4.6 killer. Again, the tracking is nice. I think I've already said that, but the tracking is nice for like stealthy survivors because I know you run into that a lot too. He has a lot that benefits. Like, there's kind of like built-in slowdown too, because you know you put people into deep wounds whenever you hit them in frenzy. So there's a lot of benefits to his chase that like can help you against kind of like lower tier to like average survivors. But if you're going up against, like, again, if you're playing Legion and you go up against a squad of good survivors, God rest your soul, man. God rest your soul, because you are gonna get fucking shit on. You are gonna get dumpstered because they are not very good. Still gonna put him above Trapper because, again, I feel like Trapper, I'm basing Trapper off of his bad games is what I'm basing him off of, right? And on a bad game with Trapper, you're literally worse than a standard 4.6 killer. You're a 4.6 killer that wasted a bunch of time setting up traps that got no value, right? So I think Trapper is at the very bottom, but like, you know, again, if someone wanted to make this argument, I wouldn't argue it too hard, but I'm very confident that they both belong in D tier. Okay, up next is Plague. This is another one that's kind of unknown to me. A bit unknown. She did get a buff recently that makes her, like, her cooldown after puking is like reduced by a bunch, and like her movement speed curve afterwards is like helped a bunch, and she basically loses less distance after puking, which is really, really nice. She's either going in A or B tier. I'll tell you that much. I don't know which one, but she's going in either one. Here's the thing about Plague. I think Plague is very overrated. I think a lot of people heavily overrate Plague. I think her power is kind of similar to Huntress in the sense where I think if you have like a long, if you have like a tall wall loop, especially with a pallet, then it's pretty easy to play around, right? Getting stunned by a pallet literally knocks her out of her corrupt puke, and also getting her corrupt puke is kind of hard. Like, you kind of have to go out of your way for it, right? Like, the survivors need to cleanse, and then you also need to go to the fountain that was cleansed and like get it, which also means that you're usually like walking away from the chase for a second to do it, which gives the survivor distance. Like, you kind of have to go out of your way for your power, and even when you're in your power, it's like only strong in some areas of the map, right? I feel like there's a lot of places on a lot of maps where your power is really awful, like really, really bad. And again, pallets are terrifying, right? Like, if they run through a pallet, they can do the thing where they like come back and drop it at the last second whenever you're about to pass through it and just kick you out of your power. And then you're just fucked, right? That's so much momentum gone whenever you lose your power. So, man, I'm honestly torn. I kind of want to put her in B. Like, I kind of do, but I feel like maybe she belongs in A still. I'm going to be honest, the Plague might be the killer that I'm the most uncertain about. Like, Spirit, I was pretty unsure about, but I think Plague is the most unsure I am. Because I don't really go against very many good Plagues, and I also don't play Plague a lot myself because I just kind of find her boring. So it's very hard, dude. It's very, very difficult to figure this one out. I think... Oh, man. I feel like people are going to get pissed if I put her in B tier. I don't know. I genuinely don't know, man. I mean, if we're going to talk about some of her benefits, like, she kind of gets, like, health states for free, even against good survivors, right? Like, you can just puke on a pallet or puke on a window, and then if a survivor vaults it, they get, like, sick, and then you just chase them around for a while, and eventually that sickness will turn into a damage state for free. So she kind of gets, like, a free damage state on everybody, given enough time. She also has a pretty good, like... She sort of has, like, gen control in the way that she can puke on gens and then kick on them, so you either have to let them regress or get sick by touching them. She also has pretty good add-ons. If we're going to take the add-ons into account, she's one of those people that has add-ons that like impact her a lot, right? Like Black Incense, is that what it's called? I think Black Incense is what it's called. Is insane, very, very strong, super strong add-on. Honestly, like kind of a game changer for her. But again, I don't know, man. Like she feels like a weaker Huntress to me in a way, almost. Like, I know that it's not the exact same, but like, I feel like the tiles that Huntress are strong at is the same ones that she's strong at in her power. But I feel like when she's not in her power, she's just a 4.6 killer, right? She's like the same as, like, I don't know, Myers or even like Legion, right? When she's not in her power. And getting her power, you kind of have to go out of your way, kind of like Huntress, except you also can get knocked out of it by getting stunned. Man, I'm putting her in B tier, dude. I'm doing it. She's going in B tier. I think with her recent buffs, maybe she should go in A tier, but I think it's close. I think it's really, really close. I'm gonna put her in B tier. I might move her to A tier at the end of the video. I think I think at the end, when I take a good look at the actual whole list, maybe I'll move her up. But I feel like she just has too much counterplay, and I feel like you have to go so far out of your way to like actually use her power that along with her counterplay just makes her not good, man. It just makes her not good at all. So we're putting her in B tier. Okay, up next is Ghostface. Ghostface to me, I feel like is a solid. Ooh, oh, is he a solid? Okay, I feel like every killer that I see, there's two tiers that I'm in between for each one. I'm always hovering between two. For Ghostface, it's B and C. To me, he's either a B tier killer or a C tier killer. I'm leaning towards B. So let's talk about it. He's a stealth killer. He's one of the only killers in the game that can be fully undetectable while being 4.6 without like the use of any special add-ons or perks or anything. Just like with his power alone, he can be completely stealthy while going 4.6 meters per second, which is nuts, right? While also being able to like interact, I should say, right? Like I guess technically Wraith does it, but Wraith has to uncloak before we can actually interact with anything. So that's really good, right? Like the ability to stealth up to somebody while going the speed of a normal killer is nuts. And you can get a lot of free hits that way, right? Like I feel like getting one guaranteed free hit with Ghostface is very common, even if you're not even very good with him. Like I feel like it's very, very common. So being injured against Ghostface is super dangerous. And you can use that to your advantage, right? You can spread damage, you can run perks that make healing harder. But again, I feel like the hit and run playstyle has taken a big hit because of the fact that boons are so popular right now, right? The fact that like boons are so popular and the fact that like healing is so strong, like I think people are discovering more and more how OP med kits are, and also like circle of healing is insane right now. And I feel like the hit and run strategy just isn't as good. So I feel like the meta is more like shifting right now towards like killers that are just strong and chase as opposed to killers that like spread damage, which means, you know what? I think he's going in C tier, actually. And I'll tell you this much. I'm going to be moving Wraith to C tier by the end of this video. I'm just going to give you guys a spoiler right now. At the end of this video, Wraith is also going down. If Ghostface is down here, so is Wraith, 100%. But I honestly think I'm going to put Ghostface in C tier just because of the current meta. I think that's really what it is. I think if it wasn't for like the current meta where healing is kind of really good, then I think he would probably be in B tier because I do think he has really, really good stealth, right? I think he has one of the best stealth potentials in the game. I still think... I guess you could just play him as a stalk killer, right? You don't have to hit and run. You can stalk survivors and down them. But even then, like a really good survivor that you stalk and get and that gets exposed is most likely gonna just like play really safe in loops and not get caught. You can crouch mid chase and without losing very much distance, which does help you in chase. Like you can kind of use it to get some cheeky hits that you might not normally be able to get. But it's not like, again, it doesn't really work against super good survivors. Like it might work like here and there, but I don't know. Again, if someone's exposed, they're going to be playing super safe to the point where nothing like that will work. And I think the only way to really get an exposed hit with them against good survivors is to actually be stealthy. But honestly, they really shouldn't be falling for that either. Yeah. Every upside I get, again, he's a killer where if we're talking about like, you know, newer, like your average players, he would be much higher. But against really good survivors and with the current meta, C tier. He'll be top of C tier. I think he's above these guys, but C tier I think is where he goes. Okay, up next we got Demogorgon, the legacy killer, dude. You can't even get this killer anymore, man. We're probably gonna be seeing him less and less because of that. Demo's a weird one. I think he actually belongs in. Oh man, Demo's tough, dude. He's tough. I actually think he belongs in A tier. I actually do. I think he belongs in A tier. Demo's actually pretty insane. His zoning is nuts. Like his shred ability is absolutely bonkers good, man. Like you can just deny all windows and pallets basically. Like you can put the survivors in so many scenarios where like it's like, well, do I vault this pallet or do I go to this window or, you know, do I do this or that? Because if I do, I'm just gonna get hit by a shred. It feels like a lot of the counterplay to him is just like pre-throwing pallets, but even then it's barely effective. It's effective in the way that it's effective against Bubba, where like you'll shred the pallet and then just be right on their ass. Especially if you're running something like Barb's glasses, which almost every demo runs, you'll be right on their ass right afterwards, right? But also the added benefit, even though like his pallet play is slightly less good than Bubba, he has mobility, which is also really, really good. Like I think the difference between good like good demos and great demos is their use of portals. Like you'll find that if you watch Demogorgon's like Bronx play, he uses his portals really, really well. Like really well. Whereas like someone like me who doesn't really have that much experience with demo, I don't really use my portals like sometimes I'll go entire games without even using portals. Like I'll just forget about them and I'll just be shredding all game, right? I think the use of portals and like that extra step in Demo's kit actually makes him very good. The mobility you can get out of that is insane. The tracking you can get out of it's insane. It's just a lot on top of his like way above average chase. Like his chase is pretty oppressive. honestly. Like a good demo is pretty damn impressive to go against. There's not really a lot you can do. It's one of those things where you're eventually going to die. I don't quite think he's like as good as like Huntress as far as like his snowball potential, you know? Same thing with like these two killers. I think he's like similar in chase as these two killers, but I think they just have more snowball potential than he does, right? He still can snowball, but like the lack of a one-shot down or the lack of like rapid fire hits makes it a little bit harder. But honestly, I definitely think he's above all these killers for sure. Like his chase is very strong, his mobility is good, but again, even though he does it, it takes some like you still can like, you know, avoid him. You can buy some time, right? Like if your team is in a dire situation and you really need to buy time, you can kind of just like pre-throw pallets and let him break them. And even though you're using a bunch of pallets, you can at least buy your team time to like recover and get back situated and then get back on generators, which is usually enough to win a game at high level. So yeah, even he is strong. He is strong. I think people underrate him, but I think A tier is as high as he goes. But honestly, A tier is pretty good. He's up there. He's up there. I'll put him at the bottom of A tier. Not quite as good as these guys, but he's up there. Super strong chase, good mobility, but still some clear counterplay. All right, up next we got Oni. Oni is one of my favorite killers in this entire game. I think as far as like this isn't even relevant to his like his ability level. He's just one of my favorite design killer. He's so cool, dude. He's so fucking cool. It's so cool to have a killer that like normally is just like a default, not really much of a threat. But then like as he gets hits and he powers up, he gets to like this empowered stage where it's like, oh shit, he's fucking empowered right now. Look the fuck out. And you're like all intense and it's anxiety inducing. But then it ends. And then he goes back to his normal self where he's not really that scary, right? It's such a cool design. It's like temporary, insane power. And then it just goes away, you know? I think it's cool. I think it's such a cool killer design. I love him a lot. I'm going to put him in A tier. I'm going to put him right in A tier. I think he's above the B tier killers, but I think it's tough because you could maybe make an argument that he belongs in B tier because honestly, against if we're talking about like top of the line, like competitive level survivors, they can literally just deny him his power altogether, right? Like they can play so safe that they just basically pre-throw every pallet and don't even let him get the initial hit to even get going, right? Because before you get your power, you are just the most standard of standard killers. You have nothing. You're just a 4.6 killer, a full terror radius, nothing to help you get hits, nothing to help you sneak up on people, nothing to help you in any way at all. You just run at people and hope that you can get hits, right? So against really, really good survivors, they can sometimes just play super safe, like basically pre-throw every pallet and so on and so forth, and just try to like deny him a hit for a very long time. Like I don't think it's very unreasonable to like have a game against like if we're talking about like competitive matches. I don't think it's very unreasonable to have a game where you don't get your first hit until like 2 or 3 gens are done, right? For your first hit. I'm not talking about your first hook. I'm talking about your first hit on a survivor. I mean, you'll probably break like 8 pallets in the process, but you know, like that's not terribly unreasonable, honestly. Which again is kind of a big deal for him. But the thing is all it takes is one hit. All it takes is literally one singular hit. And then it's off to the races, baby. It's off to the races. Because that person will start bleeding. You can start sucking their orbs. Once you get your power, you're insane. Like a good Oni player and his power is like it's not really like a matter of like juking him. It's a matter of like try to stay alive for as long as you can, right? Like you're going to die. It's like try to stay alive as long as you can. Like as a survivor, you're basically like, okay, can I survive for 10 seconds instead of 5 seconds? If so, that's a W. You know what I mean? Because good Onis are insane. There is like not really much you can do. Like he just goes super fast. He has no collision, so he can basically run into walls at crazy angles. You can flick like fucking. You can flick like 90 degrees, but I've seen some Onis that can flick like 180 degrees, and I don't really even know how, but like people have found a way to do it. You're also insanely fast. You just like, you can crush pallets like instantly and keep going. Like when you're actually in your power with Oni, you are a fucking unstoppable force. Like you are nuts. You are absolutely insane. Like hypothetically, if Oni was in his power at all times, he would probably be the strongest killer in the game overall, right? I mean, like it's so insane how strong like his power is. It's fucking nuts. So, and once you get your power once, as long as you can get like a down or two, those people then become injured, right? Like you hook them, they get unhooked, they're injured, then they start dropping orbs, and then you can get more orbs, and then get your power again, and then you can get your power again. And every time you get your power, as long as you're getting downs and you're getting hits while you're in your power, you can then use that. You can use that pressure to then get your power again, and it's like a never-ending cycle of having your power over and over again, right? So as soon as that ball gets rolling with Oni, it's fucking dangerous. It's very dangerous. Again, his early game is still weak, and really good survivors can punish it really hard. I would say it's also very RNG dependent. It's very map dependent, right? Like some maps, like even, you know, like maybe he can catch you in like a bad position. Like if you're on Shelter Woods or something, maybe you can get unlucky and be in a dead zone and he'll get a hit early or something. So there is a lot of RNG involved, but I think I'm going to put him in A tier. I think he's better than the people in B tier for sure. But like, again, the weak early game. And if we're talking about like, I want this tier list to be like you're going up against like fucking professional DBD gamers, which I know isn't a real thing, but you know, you're going up against like pro DBD gamers, and you want to know like what killer will stand a chance. You know what I mean? I would say Oni stands right about the same amount of chance as these guys, maybe slightly less than them, which is why he's at the bottom of it. I think that sounds about right. Very fun killer though, very fun killer. One of my favorite killers in the entire game as far as his design goes. Fucking love Oni. Okay, next up is Slinger. Slinger is also somebody that went through a nerf recently, and similar to Freddy, everyone was like, oh my god, he's dead. There's no point in playing him. He's useless now. Oh god. But honestly, I don't think the nerf is really that bad. They basically just made it so that you have to LOS for like, I don't know, it's like half a second before you can shoot now, whereas before you can shoot instantly. But I don't think it really affected him that much, honestly. I still think he's pretty much just as strong as he was before. Like, I think it affected him a very minuscule amount. I think really the biggest impact it had is it just kind of made him feel worse to play. I think that's really it. It kind of just made him a little bit less fun. But, like, as far as his power goes, I still feel like he's very, 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 very strong. So, Slinger is somebody where I think in my previous video, I think I put him in S tier. But now I'm not sure. Because honestly, he has a very similar problem to like Doctor. But although he's better than Doctor. But he has the problem where he can get guaranteed hits, but the guaranteed hits sometimes take a long time, right? And also pre-thrown pallets are good against them. They're not as good as Doctor. A lot of pre-thrown pallets you can still die to as Slinger. I would say most of them, as a matter of fact. I'd say most pre-thrown pallets you can still play as Slinger. So yeah, I don't know, man. It's tough. It's very, very tough. I feel like you can get guaranteed hits pretty much all the time. They take a little bit of time to do. He no longer has the stealth potential that he had before. He either goes at like the bottom of S tier or he goes at the top of A tier. And it's very, very, very close. But I think we're going to run into a lot of S tier killers towards like I still think we have a lot of S tier killers coming up. So like, I'm not sure how full S tier is going to be. Oh man, this one's tough. I'm actually gonna put him at the top of A. I'm gonna put him at the top of A for now. I think I said earlier that Hag wasn't gonna get overthrown at the top of A, but for now I'm gonna put him there. He might go to S tier later. He might. Heads up, he might go to S tier. Again, I need to talk about him. I keep forgetting to talk about killers. I just throw him in tiers and then forget about it. He's very, very strong. He has a gun. The gun's hitbox is very, very tiny. It's like a fucking needle. You can shoot through just about anything. Like seriously, the amount of shit you can shoot through is insane. You can shoot through. You can shoot people's feet, like underneath hay bales on cold wind on certain tiles. Like little ass like things that you'd never think you'd ever be able to get shot through. You can actually get shot through. It's nuts. The amount of crazy shots I've seen as Slinger is absolutely wild. On top of the fact that, like, if the Slinger just doesn't miss, then you just die, right? Like, you just die. Like, the ADS is, like, the ADS doesn't take that long, and you can say, like, oh, just juke him, lol, or whatever. But at the end of the day, like, if he doesn't miss, he doesn't miss, right? Like, if he doesn't miss, then you're just fucked. You're just dead. And I feel like any killer that has that potential where it's like as long as you play well, you just get the hit every time. Like, again, that sounds similar to Spirit, right? It sounds very similar to Spirit where it's like as long as you play correctly, you get the hit every time. Although I'll admit that playing Slinger at like a perfect level is way harder than Spirit. Like his hitbox, like the hitbox of the gun being so precise also means that it's sometimes hard to actually like land it, right? If you miss by like even a little bit, it doesn't connect, which can be a bummer. But yeah, like the fact that he can basically just guarantee hits at any point during a chase means that he's going to be getting downs very, very often, which also means that, you know, you're going to get people off gens very quickly, which also means that, that people aren't going to, be getting gens off very quick, which also means you're going to have more time, And I just stumbled over my words and realized that I said the same thing like 3 times. The point is he's good. He ends chases quickly, and that's really, at the end of the day, that's all you really need to be a good killer, is the ability to end chases quickly. I mean, he ends them very, very quickly. So he's gonna go in. Dude, this one is actually really hard. I can't decide right now. I literally cannot decide which one he goes in. I'm gonna put him in A, but he's probably gonna get moved by the end of the video. So he's going into A tier for now. Okay, up next is Pyramid Head. Pyramid Head is, it's funny because like these guys got released right before and after each other, Pyramid Head and Slinger, and I feel like they're so similar in the way that they play. Like they're both heavy zoning killer. They both have like ranged attacks. They both can get like almost guaranteed hits. If we're gonna talk about their potential at like when they're played perfectly though, Pyramid Head I think goes in S tier. Like we're talking perfect play. He's pretty nuts, man. He's pretty nuts. As long as he knows the timings, he can stick a sword in the ground pretty much any time that you're coming up to a pallet or window. And he basically puts you in this weird scenario where, like, if you use the pallet or use the window, he uses his shockwave and he hits you. If you don't use the pallet or window, he just picks a sword up out of the ground and then smacks you with his normal attack. The one counterplay to that being kind of similar to Plague, where you can kind of like run past the pallet, wait for him to like pick up a sword, and then kind of come back to the pallet and throw it while he's underneath it to get the stun, right? Like there is kind of counterplay to it, but even then, like you can watch for that as Pyramid Head. Like you can kind of like semi-respect the pallet, but then not actually respect it. You know what I mean? Like there is some counterplays to it. But even still, even if we just say like, hey, yeah, that's clear cut counterplay, there's still so much else to him, right? The fact that his shockwave goes through walls means that at any point in time, you can go for random prediction hits and get hits, which is really, really insane. And as a survivor, there's no way to know that that's coming, right? If you predict that it is coming and it's not, then you'll end up losing a bunch of distance because you juke nothing, right? Like if he's on the other side of the wall and he has a sword in the ground, and you're like, oh god, he might shockwave, and you try to juke it, you might end up just putting yourself in a bad position, and then he might turn the corner and be right there with his sword out ready to hit you, right? So like you get into these weird mind games where it's like you don't know what he's going to do, and if you guess wrong at all, you just get hit, right? On top of all that, he also has the ability to get around a lot of like anti-tunnel measures, right? Like he can get around decisive strike. He's basically one of the best killers for like tunneling a survivor out of the game, which, you know, sorry survivor mains, I hate tunneling too, right? Tunneling sucks. It's boring. I wish it wasn't as effective as it is, but unfortunately it is effective. And it is sometimes, I shouldn't say always a good strategy. It is sometimes a good strategy. And he is like by miles one of the best people at doing it. And he can do it very efficiently and very well. And he can get around a lot of the countermeasures to it, which means that getting one person out of the game that fast is a big deal, especially on a killer that already is that oppressive, right? Like it's kind of nuts. We were talking earlier about how insane Myers' add-on is, the Tombstone, because you can kill somebody. Well, like Pyramid Head can do that kind of while also just being an insanely powerful killer. Like he's just very, very, very strong in chase. That really is all he has though. He doesn't have any mobility. He doesn't have. I mean, he's 4.6. He's not slow, right? Like for instance, Like Slinger goes 4.4. He's slow, so at least he has regular movement speed, which helps a bit in like the mobility department. But he doesn't have any like extra mobility. He basically just has a really, really, really strong chase, and he kind of has some like anti-camping measures. Or sorry, not anti-camping, anti-tunneling measures. As far as like he's able to tunnel. I guess he's anti-tunneling. Is that what it is? It's not anti-tunneling, it's anti-tunneling. He can basically shut down the anti-tunnel perks and tunnel right through them, essentially. And his hook play is really insane. I mean, if you try to unhook near him, he can just shockwave you both, so that's really nice. Just overall, just very, very strong. I mean, there's not like a whole lot of weaknesses outside of like this kind of subpar mobility. And the fact that like he's not one of those killers where even like pre-throwing pallets isn't that good. Like you can pre-throw pallets against him and it's kind of good, but even then it's not entirely safe. He can just stick a sword in the ground while chasing you around the pallet, and every time you go to vault it, you know, if you vault it, you get hit. Like he's kind of like Slinger. You can play even thrown pallets as him like pretty well, like pretty easily. I would say maybe even better than Slinger. So even that, like I don't know. I feel like he gets guaranteed hits as long as you play him perfectly. And he's just kind of nuts, man. He's just kind of nuts. He's very, very strong. And I think a really, really good Pyramid player is probably in the S tier. He also wasn't held back by like any major cooldowns, right? Like I'd say his major downfall is that if you miss one of his shockwave attacks, it's kind of punishing. Like it has like a pretty decent cooldown, and the survivors can get some distance where they can hold W. But like his cooldown is honestly isn't even as punishing as like Spirits, right? Like I don't even know if it might not even be crazy to put him above Spirit here. Honestly, it really might not be. Like Spirit has a longer cooldown than he does. I think Spirit can more consistently get hits though, whereas, you know, I think he maybe takes a little bit longer. I would say Spirit's a little bit more mobile too because she moves really fast in her power. So I think I'll keep her above. But I think it's honestly pretty insane. Like he can get guaranteed hits with a pretty low cooldown, and also the tunneling is nuts. Yeah, that's definitely where he belongs. Okay, next up is Blight. Blight, I think right now, to me, is cemented as the second place killer. I think he's right behind Nurse. Blight is fucking nuts. He's goddamn insane. I think Blight is mostly insane because of the amount of fucking crazy exploits that there are with this killer. I feel like literally being a good Blight player is literally just knowing the exploits. I literally feel like that's what it is. It's knowing how to exploit the fuck out of them, you know? Do crazy hug tech stuff, do like moon dashing, fucking flick your DPI to do crazy shit. Fuck, there's people that are basically glorifying lag switching these days, doing something they call quote unquote lag flicking, where they like, I don't even know how they do it, but they like stutter their internet for a minute and then turn like 180 degrees mid flick. It's fucking stupid. Like the amount of shit that you can do with this killer is nuts. But even outside of like blatant like stuff like that, that's like borderline cheating, he's still nuts. Like he's still absolutely insane. So strong. Like so powerful, especially because of his add-ons. His add-ons make his already strong base kit power just fucking bonkers OP, dude. Like speed add-ons on Blight are nuts. Like speed add-ons are nuts. Compound 21 is nuts. Compound 33 is nuts. Alchemist Ring is nuts. He has so many nutty add-ons. All of his add-ons are fucking insane, dude. Like they're all so good. A good Blight player will basically down you almost no matter what. Like you can maybe buy some time, again, maybe like pre-throwing pallets and stuff can buy you some time, but even then he'll just dash right after you, right? Like Blight's an interesting killer because I feel like almost every other killer in the game, the counterplay is to get distance, right? Like if you're playing against like a Pyramid Head, it's like, okay, just get a bunch of distance and hold that distance. Even Nurse is like this. Even Nurse is like, get a bunch of distance and try your best to maintain that distance, right? Same thing with Slinger, same thing with, oh, I just moved him, oops. Same thing with Slinger, same thing with Huntress, same thing with like all the most oppressive killers in the game are basically just like get far away from them and stay far away from them, right? Like that's usually how you counterplay almost every oppressive killer. But you can't do that with him. He's so fast. He's mobile as fuck. He's insanely mobile while also being insanely impressive, which is just such a deadly combo, honestly. Like if he was slightly more oppressive, he would be right here. He would be above Nurse. But I almost said unfortunately. I don't know if unfortunately is the right word. Fortunately, I feel like is what the better word to use here is that you can counterplay him to an extent, right? Like there is some stuff you can do but most of it's just like pre-throwing pallets, honestly. Like pre-throwing pallets, maybe sometimes if like he's going for a hug tech, you can like predict it and like, you know, like juke outwards and get him to whiff. But again, essentially, if we're talking about like borderline perfect play, a borderline perfectly played Blight is like pretty fucking insane and pretty much unstoppable. Like his skill ceiling is through the roof. Like you could almost infinitely get better with him. And yeah, I mean, if we're going to talk about borderline perfect play, a perfect play Blight is probably going to shit on almost any group of survivors in the game. Like literally. Pretty wild stuff. He has it all, man. He has mobility. He has good chase. I mean, I guess he doesn't have stealth, so I guess he doesn't technically have it all. But he has really insane mobility and really good chase, which is basically all you'd ever want out of a killer. He's absolutely nuts. If his chase was a little bit better, he'd be above Nurse, but Nurse's chase is just by miles the best in the game, and that's why she reigns supreme at the top of S, but he is right below her, honestly. He's right on her tail. He is really good. Blight is fucking nuts. And if you guys for some reason don't agree with that, I promise you just have not played against a good Blight yet, because when you go against a good Blight, holy fuck is it goddamn depressing. It is so depressing. Playing Survivor against a good Blight player just makes you hate life, dude. You're just like, what do I do? I can't run away because he catches up. I can't loop him because he just fucking hugs walls and flicks 300,000 degrees. Like it's such a bad feeling. It feels like there's nothing you can do at all. It's fucking brutal, man. It is brutal. So yeah, definitely second place. He's a really, really disgustingly good killer. Okay, up next is Twins. Twins also are straight to the S tier. A lot of the S tiers are like the killers that have been released within the past couple years. Twins is nuts. I would say below. You know what? Yeah. You know what? Yeah. I'm gonna put her at number 3 for now. I'm actually gonna put her above Spirit. This might be a bit of a hot take. I don't know. Spirit might still be better. I'm unsure about Spirit, but Twins definitely belongs in S tier. Twins is nuts. Absolutely nuts. And the reason why Twins is nuts is because Victor is nuts. Victor is like Charlotte's just a 4.6 killer, nothing special. But Victor is literally 6.0, which is ridiculously fast. He also can be made faster with add-ons. And he has a lunge that can go over pallets and over windows. There's no way to avoid being hit by Victor. no way. If Victor is coming after you and the person controlling him is good, he is going to get a hit no matter what. No matter what, he's going to get a hit. As long as the person doesn't mess up, he's getting a hit. There's no reliable way to avoid it. But that being said, there are some ways to like kind of counterplay twins as a team, which are kind of convoluted, but we can get into. Let me just I just want to evaluate. I need to like elaborate a little bit more. Like the way twins works is that as Victor, if you jump on somebody while they're full health, you latch onto them, and then it kicks you back to Charlotte, and you can't control Victor anymore. And you have to like run around as Charlotte until you either can get Victor back and take control of him again, or until you just like down somebody or whatever, right? Like it takes a while to get Victor back. Whereas if they're injured when you jump on them, you don't latch onto them. They just go down, and then you keep control of Victor. So ideally, the way that most people play twins, especially like in random public matches, I would say just in general, the way twins are usually played is you want to get survivors injured, and then while they're injured, you want to find them as Victor, down them, and then keep running around as Victor and just keep getting multiple hits on people, right? Like the perfect scenario to be in as twins is having all 4 survivors injured and just running around and downing them over and over again, right? Because there's no possible way to avoid getting hit as long as the twins player doesn't mess up. And also, you're really mobile. You're really mobile, dude. 6.0 is really fucking fast. So like, even if you down someone on one side of the map and you got to go to the whole way to the other side of the map, it doesn't take that long. I mean, I guess map to map always takes, like one corner to one corner always takes a while no matter what, but like you're way more mobile than most killers. So you run around super mobile, getting free hits, getting free downs, and it's fucking nuts, man. It's the amount of snowball potential is insane. This is the type of killer where even in competitive settings, one mistake can literally just make the game instantly a 4K. Like, Twins is usually one of those killers that, from what I've seen so far, Twins is one of those killers where even in, like, competitive games, it's either, like, a 4K or, like, she gets shit on, right? There's not a lot of, like, in-between games. Because there is ways to counterplay her, but if you, like, if she starts to snowball at all, I say she, but I should say they. If they start to snowball at all, like, if they can start to get multiple downs, if they can start to, like, get that Victor snowball going, there is, like, literally not anything you can do. Like, there's essentially nothing you can do at all. The ways that you can counterplay her, though, the ways I've seen the comp community of DBD has come up with pretty crazy ways to counterplay twins. Like they do things like, essentially, if you're injured and being chased by Victor, you can jump in a locker and then have a teammate stand in front of the locker to basically block Victor from being able to interact with it. Because normally when you jump in a locker, Victor can kind of like jump on the locker and hold it closed so that Charlotte can come up and kill you. But if you have a full health teammate stand in front of the locker, you can block the interaction so that Victor can't even interact with the locker, and Victor has no choice but to jump on the full health survivor, which then kicks you back to Charlotte, which then means there's like a good, like, I don't know, like 16 or 20 seconds where there's no Victor involved for a while, right? Which gives the survivors time to like recover and so on and so forth. I also saw weird things where like injured people can crouch in a corner, and then a full health person can like kind of body block them in the corner, and then Victor's hitbox is so big that he can't actually get the person in the corner. He can only hit the guy body blocking. So there's like cheeky ways that you can like counterplay, but you basically need to have like a buddy system. You need to be like 2 and 2. You need to be super fucking organized. Like you need to be like super organized. Like again, I hosted a tournament on my stream a while back. You can even find the VODs on this YouTube channel. If you dig into the YouTube channel, you can find the VODs. The Twins games were insane. There was only, I think, one team that managed to actually counterplay the Twins effectively out of like the 4 or 5 matches that we saw. Like every other game, even the competitive teams that train against Twins, like the ones that practice against Twins, could not do it. They couldn't do it. Twins had by far the best performances out of any killer in that tournament just because of how hard it is, right? Like you have to be so disciplined. You have to play so perfect to counterplay them. But again, if you do know the counterplay, you can do it, which is why I think she's still below Nurse and Blight. Because if the counterplay is done correctly, she is weaker than these two, right? It's just that the counterplay that you have to do is so goddamn convoluted. It requires so much coordination. It requires so much knowledge, so much everything, right? Like it just requires so much. And I can guarantee you that people are not going to do it in like your average pub games, right? Your average games at rank 1, you're not going to run into it. So like Twins is an absolutely insane killer for just like your random roundabout games that you match make for. But even in like really high skill, high competitive settings, still absolutely nuts. One mistake can literally just completely turn a game around and turn the game into a 4K instantly. And Twins is fucking insanely strong. I don't think I really have anything else to say. I think I've already been ranting long enough. Twins is nuts. Twins is fucking bonkers OP. That's it. Yeah, that's all. We're moving on. Definitely S tier. I'm putting her at number 3. Putting them at number 3 for now. I think they'll probably stay there. Okay. Trickster's up next. Trickster's a weird one. He is kind of... He's going in A tier. He's going in A tier. I'm going to put him... Ooh, he goes somewhere in the middle is where he goes. The Trickster's an interesting one because he's another ranged killer, right? And he's very comparable to like Huntress, right? They both go 4.4. They both have a ranged weapon. Although Huntress takes a little bit longer to like draw hers, right? Like... For instance, you have to like pull your hatchet back for like an entire second, which can get the survivor some distance and some leeway to get away. Whereas Trickster can start throwing his knives like immediately, but Trickster has to land like 6 knives before he gets a damage state, right? So, like, it's tough. A lot of people consider Huntress to just be like a better Trickster, and I'm sort of in that boat. Like, there's definitely some things Trickster can do that Huntress can't. Like, for instance, even if you're looping around a pretty safe tile, if you just land like 1 dagger every rotation around, you could eventually get a hit. Whereas like Huntress might not be able to get a hit at all, right? And by a hit, I mean a damage state. But not like that's such a rare niche situation. And even in that situation, you can probably just like throw whatever pallet's there and probably get away. Yeah, honestly, even A tier might be a little too high. Even A tier might be too high, to be honest with you. I definitely think if he is an A tier, he's at the bottom of A tier. I think he has some pretty good counterplay. I think you have to land a lot of consecutive knives. Pallets counter him pretty well. Oh, he's also slow. He also has to reload. You know what, dude? You know what? This might be bold of me, but I think I'm going to put him at the top of B. Honestly. He's kind of slow. Like, he's kind of slow. He's oppressive, but so is Doctor. Right? He's about as oppressive as Doctor. Maybe more. He's probably more oppressive than Doctor. But I wouldn't say he's more oppressive than Huntress. He's probably on the same level. But he has to land more of his daggers to get hits. He has to reload just like Huntress. He just feels like kind of a worse Huntress to me, honestly. Like, I guess I said that earlier, and I said I kind of agree, but I guess I just do agree. I just feel like he's a worse Huntress. I don't know. I really just don't think he's that good. I'm trying to think if there's any like redeeming qualities to him that I'm not thinking of, but not really. No, he's just kind of like Huntress, but he has to hit more daggers. Like his add-ons are kind of cool. Like things like ricochet daggers are cool, but none of them are like really insanely OP, right? If anything, Huntress has better add-ons with stuff like Eerie Head. Yeah, no. I mean, he's good. He's a ranged killer. He can get hits on like I would say everything I said about Huntress is the same with him, right? I would say at like low wall tiles that he can throw over, he's pretty devastating and he's pretty much oppressive. Like you can basically not avoid getting hit altogether. Like he basically will get a hit no matter what at like a low wall tile. But at like a high wall tile, he feels like he has pretty good counterplay, you know? Maybe a little bit less than Huntress, but like also at the same time more. I don't know how to explain it. Like, I feel like maybe there's less counterplay than Huntress, but all it takes is, like, getting 1 pallet stun and then running away, and all your progress resets, and he has to start over from scratch hitting 6 daggers, right? Which just takes so long. It just takes so long. That's really what it is. Like, even if he can get hits that Huntress can't, it just takes a long time. That's really what it is. That's the thing I'm trying to articulate here that I'm struggling with, is it just takes so long, right? Even in the very niche situations where Huntress can't get the hit, but Trickster can, it takes so fucking long to do it that it's just not worth it. You know what I mean? It's just not worth it. By the time you get the hit, you know, like if you were one of the actual good killers, you could have got a hit and then also a down or, you know, or like a gentle pop, or it just takes so long to do that it ends up not being worth it. So I think he's gonna be put in B tier. He's good. It just, his time efficiency is a little bit lacking. And yeah, he's also just kind of lame. He's also just kind of lame. No, I'm just kidding. I actually kind of like his aesthetic. I think it's kind of cool. So he's gonna go in B tier. I have a love-hate relationship with Trickster. So sometimes I love his aesthetic and sometimes I hate it. Sometimes I'm like, this doesn't belong in DVD, but sometimes I'm like, you know what? This is actually pretty sick. You know? So I don't know, man. I don't know how I feel about the whole lame / I like him thing, but you know, that's again completely irrelevant. Not anything to do with this video. He's going in B tier. Okay, next one is Nemi. Nemi is another interesting one because he falls under the same kind of boat, right? I feel like there's a lot. I feel like this has been the standard for killers lately, and you're gonna hear me say the same thing about a lot of killers, because it's been the fucking design philosophy that they've been following. Is killers that are oppressive in chase, like they have really good anti-loop and they're oppressive in chase, but they're just slow at doing it, right? And that's Nemi. That's Trickster. That's Nemi. That's Slinger. I would say that's almost Pyramid Head, but Pyramid Head isn't quite as bad. Like, it's such a standard design for killers these days, and Nemi is right there with him. I would say he's pretty insanely oppressive in a chase. He can whip the tentacle over pallets, over windows, and get hits. It also charges up like pretty much fucking instantly, so there's really no way to like know it's coming. Oh man, the main issue with Nemi again is the bad time efficiency, right? Even though he can get basically guaranteed tentacle hits, it takes an additional hit to actually down them, right? Like you have to hit them once to infect them, and then it starts doing damage. So it's almost like you have to hit them 3 times. So, and they get a speed boost from getting hit by the tentacles, so they end up running really far away. So again, he's really oppressive. He's a 4.6 killer. He also has zombies, though. I didn't really mention that. I'm going to put him in a tier for now. I want to put him in A tier for now. He also has zombies, which is actually kind of a big deal. A lot of people kind of underestimate the zombies. The zombies are actually pretty good passive pressure, right? Like, the zombies will go harass people on gens sometimes, and it's a pain in the ass to deal with. Sometimes mid-chase, the zombies will come in and kind of like cut someone off and make them not able to take a certain path, or they'll just completely kill them altogether. The zombies can actually be pretty nuts. They're also kind of RNG, right? Like, sometimes they do nothing at all, and sometimes they do a lot. So there's a lot of like RNG there, but they definitely have potential to do a lot. On top of the fact that he just has a really strong chase in general. I think I'm actually gonna put Nemi in. Ooh, man, he definitely goes in A tier. It's just where in A tier. I don't know where in A tier, man. I really don't. It's hard. Like, Hag, I still feel like deserves some credit. I feel like the whole fact that holding, I think right here is where he goes, right? I think right here, yeah. I think Slinger is a little bit better time efficiency. Like, I think him and Slinger are pretty much the same level of oppressiveness, but I think Slinger is a little bit better time efficiency wise than Nemi is. And I think Hag is just overall, like, I think Hag plays a whole different game than these two, but I think she's just better than Nemi, but worse than Slinger. Like, I think that just makes sense to me. And he also feels more oppressive and time efficient than like the rest of these guys, you know, given their place in the game. I think he goes right about there in the A tier. He is very oppressive. You can basically get downs no matter what. A good Nemi basically cannot be looped. He can basically only be like pre-thrown against. But again, pre-throwing is an option against him, although it's not a very good one because he can break pallets while also running through them at the same time, which is really, really strong. Yeah, his only weakness, really his only weakness is his time efficiency. That's it. If he was a more time efficient killer, he'd be nuts. The fact that it just takes an extra hit to get downs if you're eating whips means that you can take a long time, and also you can vaccinate yourself to like cure your sickness, which then makes the next chase take 3 hits again too, and that can happen up to 4 times as well. So all that in mind, all that time efficiency stuff in mind, he just goes in he goes in mid A tier. Okay, next one up is Pinhead, and guess what, guys? Guess what? He is an oppressive killer that's also not very time efficient. Who would have thunk it? Who would ever thunk it? I mean, kinda. I guess he's kind of in the same boat, although he kind of has an interesting part to him where he actually has built-in game slowdown. So that's actually interesting because it kind of makes up for his time efficiency. Pinhead's a weird one. I'm not really sure where to put him either. He's another one that I'm a bit uncertain about, because there's a lot to him, right? Like, his ability to shut down chases and be anti-loop is actually really strong. He can basically hit you with the chains, and then it latches a bunch of chains on you, and you have to take the chains off. Otherwise, you're slow, and also you can't fast vault anything. You can only slow vault things. So he can play almost anything, even even after it's thrown. Most pallets you can even still play after they're thrown. So even pre-throwing isn't super effective against them, although it's still probably pretty good. We're going to drop him in A tier for now while I decide, because he's either going to be A or S. But on top of that, like, you know, oppressiveness mid-chase, which again, his oppressiveness mid-chase is like, I would honestly compare it to like Clown. I would compare it to Clown more so than like Slinger and Nemesis and Pyramid Head. Like, Slinger, Nemesis, and Pyramid Head are killers where they basically just have an aggressive ability that damages you, right? It's like, hey, if you don't dodge this ability, or more, not even if you don't dodge it, it's more like if they don't miss this ability, you just take fucking damage, right? You just take damage from the ability. Whereas with killers like like Pinhead, or like even like Clown, it's more like this ability debuffs you and then sets him up to actually come up and get the hit himself with his normal M1 ability, right? Which makes it slightly less time efficient, right? It seems like I'm being nitpicky, but like the difference between that, like, need to like walk up and actually hit them whenever they're debuffed, as opposed to them just taking damage right away, that extra like, you know, like 5 or so seconds adds up when it's every single hit. Oops, he just got moved down on accident. That adds up when it's every single hit, right? Like it adds up over time, and it ends up making him a lot less time efficient. As well as the fact that his power isn't it's pretty impressive, but it's not like insane. I'm still kind of learning about it myself, so I can't speak super confidently on it. But it seems like there's definitely some situations where you can get hit with Pinhead's power and still be okay. It also is kind of inconsistent. It's a bit RNG. Sometimes the hooks that'll spawn up that chain onto them will sometimes spawn in really bad areas, and you can break them really, really easily with the environment. And that's really unfortunate. I've had a lot of times where like I hit people with my chain and then they break out like almost instantly just because, I don't know, they spawn like right beside a tree that they use to break them off or something. So the fact that they can use environment and the fact that the spawns of the chains, the additional chains anyway, are RNG makes it a little bit not great, but it's still really, really strong. And what I didn't get into is the box. His additional ability, the box, is actually really fucking strong. Essentially, the lament configuration, or whatever the hell it's called, I don't know, I didn't watch Hellraiser. It spawns up somewhere on the map, and it sits there for a while, and the survivors are basically on a time limit, and they have to find the box and solve it before that time limit hits a certain number, or like a certain amount. And if they don't before that certain amount, then it spawns something called a chain hunt. And the chain hunts are insane. They're very nuts. It basically just spawns chains periodically on every single survivor, which A, makes noise, so it kind of helps you find survivors. B, it like locks onto them, which prevents them from doing actions, so you can't really like do gens during a chain hunt, or at least not very efficiently, because you're constantly having to like dodge chains and take them off of you. And C, it helps you during a chase, because if you're chasing someone during a chain hunt, they'll have constant passive chains spawning on them that they have to either be juking while also trying to juke you, or they'll eat the chains and they'll slow down, right? So it just like chain hunts are nuts. They help in like every aspect, right? So the survivors kind of have a side objective that they have to consistently be doing. So it's kind of like built-in game slowdown in that way, right? Like they have to be consistently finding it and solving it. Otherwise, they get hit with this really, really big, major like team-wise debuff. But also, somebody discovered. I'm gonna credit Ots because Ots is who I heard it from, but I don't know who Ots heard it from. But someone discovered that you can actually figure out where the lament configuration spawns based on your position as well as the survivor's position when it spawns, right? Apparently, it'll always spawn the furthest away possible from like you and all 4 of the survivors. There's some kind of formula. Ots made a whole video on it. If you look into his channel, I'm sure you can find it. But there's basically a formula where like as long as you know the position of the survivors, you could actually know where the box spawns, which can be a really big deal. Because finding the box, I don't know if you guys know this, but finding the box yourself as Pinhead makes it so that you solve it yourself, and then it instantly spawns a chain hunt. It spawns a chain hunt, and then it spawns the box up somewhere else far away that the survivors then have to go deal with. It also makes all the survivors scream, so it reveals their position. It's basically really powerful. Essentially, if you find the box as Pinhead, it's a very, very good thing. It's very strong. It makes it so that the next like couple minutes of gameplay are very in your favor, that's for sure. Like it's almost like, I wouldn't say it's like Oni level power up, but it's like similar, right? Like you get like a big power up. And again, the fact that like you can kind of know where it is just based on like knowing the positions. I think if you're a good killer that has good game sense and really pays attention to where survivors are, it's not that unreasonable that you would know roundabout where every survivor is when the box spawns, and then know generally where the box is, right? And also, if the survivors pick up the box and then you down them, it counts as you picking it up. So even if you don't go for it right away, you can like kind of hover near it, wait for a survivor to pick them up, and then chase that survivor, down them, and then spawn a chain hunt right after they're downed. It's nuts. Like the amount of things you can do with the box are insane. So because of that, he's going. I think I'm actually gonna put him like up here in A tier. It's tough. I'm gonna put him above Nemi, but below Hag, maybe. I don't know, man. He's one of those killers where I feel like we haven't really seen his like untapped potential yet, you know? I really feel like if people really grind and put the time on Pinhead, you might see some crazy cracked out Pinheads, but I honestly haven't really seen many people doing it. Pinhead feels like a pretty unpopular killer, at least to me. I haven't seen very many like dedicated Pinhead main content creators or anything, right? Like I haven't seen anything like that yet. So I don't know, man. I think this is where he belongs, but this is definitely one that's very sketch, and it could go either way because I just feel like I haven't really seen him to his full potential yet. But I can definitely see the potential there, right? I can see the potential. I think potentially if people get really cracked at him, he has potential to be up here. Honestly, honest to God, I think he could be. I think he really, really could be. But for now, I just haven't seen it yet, so I'm gonna put him right there and like high A tier. And last but not least, we got Crow Lady, who I also love. I've been loving this killer a lot. I know that's probably a bit unpopular. A lot of people, I think, have been hating this killer, but I've been liking her a lot, actually. She's been really, really fun. And hey, guys, you might not believe what I'm going to say about Artist right now, but she's a pretty oppressive killer that takes a long time to be oppressive and doesn't have very good time efficiency. I know, right? That's crazy. I've never said that about a killer before. But she's pretty oppressive, but she takes a long time to do it. I would say her additional thing, kind of like how Pinhead's additional thing is that he has like the slowdown, and you know, Nemesis is that he has the zombies. I would say her additional thing is that she kind of has like map wide tracking as well as map wide potential for damage, and also kind of game slowdown too. I actually don't know where to rank her. I'm gonna put her at where I think my best idea is at this moment. But she's another one where it could change, right? Like, it could change. People can figure out new things to do with her that are insane. People could also figure out really easy ways to counterplay her that maybe people didn't think of. Like, it sounds dumb because I know she's been out for like a couple months, but she's still kind of too unknown, to be honest with you. Like, there's still a lot that could be learned on both sides as far as Artist is concerned. But I will say, as far as her strengths and weaknesses, she is pretty oppressive, right? Like, there's like, you can basically shut down looping altogether, right? There's no looping in Artist at all because you can set down a crow, and then if you loop, you run into the crow, which then damages you, right? So looping is completely impossible against Artists. Like, even at a very basic level, it's just impossible. So you basically have to hold W and chain tiles together, right? It's all about chaining tiles and running to different tiles and running to different palettes and kind of using the whole map as a whole as opposed to just using one individual tile. But even if you do that, she still has potential to be really oppressive, right? Because if she hits you with one initial crow and like puts the birds on you, then you literally have time to wait for your cooldown, set 2 more birds, and then send them. And if one of those 2 birds hits you, you take a full damage state. Like, the amount of time it takes to get the birds off is longer than it takes for her to follow up with 2 birds, as long as you only use 1 bird to get the initial bird hit, if that makes sense. If you're confused about what I'm talking about, feel free to go watch any of my Artist videos that I put on YouTube recently, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. It's a pretty fun way to play her, but it's also pretty insane. It's very, very strong. And you could honestly kind of like zone people out that way. Like, if they have birds, you can set up the follow-up birds in a certain direction, and then the survivor can't go that way. If they go that way, you send the bird and they get hit. If they go the other way, then there might be like nothing there, right? Like, for instance, if someone's running towards Shack with birds on their head, you just set a crow towards Shack, and then they can't do anything, right? If they go into Shack, you send the bird and they take damage. If they don't go into Shack, then you follow them away from it and they get hit, you know? So she's very oppressive in that way. But again, it takes a while because you have to do what I just said. You have to hit them with an additional bird, keep chasing them, follow up with more, and then you get the damage, right? And then you rinse, repeat over and over again, right? So it's very bad time efficiency. But I will say that she kind of makes up for it in the fact that she can send crows. Like, the crows have infinite range, and she can send them across the map to different gens. Like, she can randomly just send crows to different gens and hit people with birds. And the thing about that, too, is if you get hit with birds while you're sitting on a gen, you kind of need to take them off. Like, you can't really just ignore them because at any point in time, she can send follow-up birds that will damage you. You know what I mean? So you kind of can't just ignore it and do the gen. I mean, you could, but it's really risky, right? Like, you're risking taking damage states, which is really bad, obviously. Like, and if you do take damage states, that's super good for the Artist, right? Being able to chase one survivor while also like doing damage to another one across the map is not something that very many killers can do. On top of that, she kind of can chase multiple survivors at the same time, right? Like, if there's multiple survivors in an area, she could be throwing crows at one of them while chasing another person just by standard 4.6 killer, right? Which not a lot of other killers can do as well, like having like multiple chases going at once. There's a lot of good things that she can do. There's a lot of good things. Her tracking is good because you can just send crows to gens, and then if someone's on it, they'll get hit, and you'll know that gen's being worked on. Like, you can kind of check gens from across the map. The crow's hitboxes are fucking huge too, by the way. You don't have to be like super precise, which also helps her a lot. Yeah, I mean, she's just nuts. She has potential to do so much. It's just a matter of time efficiency. But that's the thing, is it's like, again, it's hard to judge because I feel like I don't know if I've seen anybody master her yet, right? Like, I feel like when the artist is mastered, she honestly might be. I don't know what I just did. Sorry. Hold on. We got to go back to oh god, presentation mode. I feel like, oh god, she got put in D tier. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry you got put there. I feel like when she's mastered, like if you straight up master artist, she might go in S tier. She really might. She might be an S tier killer. Maybe. Because she has potential to pressure like multiple areas of the map at the exact same time. And like also her chases are like pretty oppressive and like you can get almost guaranteed downs. Like I think she has potential to be up here. I really do. I think I think at her highest potential, she's right here. I think this is her highest potential if you play her like perfectly and if she's as strong as I think. But again, with that in mind, there's also potential for more counterplay too, which is something you have to keep in mind, right? Even though there's potential, I think, for people to continue to get better at her, there's also potential for survivors to continue to get better at playing against her. So I think for this tier list, I'm gonna put her. Oh man, I guess I'm gonna put her at the top of A tier. I'm gonna put her above Slinger. Oh man, or should I just put her bottom S? Oh, dude, I don't know. This is hard. This is actually really hard. I think I'm gonna put her. I think I'm gonna put her at the top of A tier. I don't really like how many killers are A tier. I feel like half the killers are in A tier, but honestly, I think that's how it is. I think that's just the strength level of a lot of killers that they've released. Honestly, I feel like they've released a lot of killers that have the same kind of like this same design of like being oppressive, but also bad time efficiency. And I think they all belong in this tier. So. You know, don't blame me, dude. Blame the devs. I mean, honestly, I think it's silly looking, seeing how many people are in here, but I think it's accurate. I think with her potential, she's better than Slinger. I think she could be an S tier above Pyramid Head, but I think she's just quite not there. But I do think she's better than Slinger just because she's able to do something similar to him with her oppressiveness while also being able to pressure the rest of the map at the same time. She's also 4.6 and she's more mobile. And she basically just does the same thing as a lot of these killers, but just a little bit better and a little bit more efficient. So yeah, I think top of A tier is where she goes. It's also definitely subject to change based on how things go. So let me look at this list now. That's the whole list. We're done. That's all the killers. Let me see if there's anything that I want to change. Like already, I want to tell you that Wraith belongs in D tier. I'm going to do that right away. Right away, I'm putting Wraith in D tier. I can tell you that right off the get-go. That's definitely going to be a thing. He's going down to D tier. As far as who else... Like, I'm a little skeptical in Pyramid Head being an S tier. I still feel like this is a thing, although I think a lot of people might disagree with this. But I feel like if he's played perfectly, I think this is where he belongs. I do. It's hard to say, but I feel like that's where he goes. You know what? You know what I'm going to do? Man, I feel like here's my thing is I feel like if he goes in S tier, I feel like Artist goes in S tier too. But I also feel like it's way too early to be putting Artist in S tier. Like that just feels wrong. I'm doing it. I'm gonna put her at the bottom of S tier. I'm gonna do it. I'm crazy. There's not that much of a difference between bottom of S tier and top of A tier, right? I'm putting her in S tier. Fuck it. I'm doing it. She's at the very bottom of S tier. I think she has potential to be that good if you master. I think it's hard, and I really want to see more people try to master because I think she has potential to be nuts. But I think that's where she goes. I think everyone else looks pretty good. Let me do like a quick look through to see if there's any killers that I'm like, wait, why are you above you? You know what I mean? Like, I don't really think so, right? Everyone looks pretty good. Like, Nurse would slaughter, like, yeah, these guys would all kill the fuck out of you. These guys are all really strong where if you make any major mistakes, you're gonna die, but like they're not really like insane. These guys are all like kind of men. As long as you know what you're doing, you'll be fine. These guys are all kind of like lower tier, and these guys are like bottom of the bottom tier. Yeah, I mean, this looks fine. I think this looks fine. I think this looks like my finalized tier list. This looks right. I don't really have anything else to say. So yeah, there you go. There's the finalized list. Feel free to leave comments and tell me how stupid I am and how much you disagree with me. Again, keep in mind that this tier list is solely for like very high level play. Like, this is, again, assuming that you're going against a very, very good group of survivors that really know what they're doing and, like, what killer, you know, would stand the best chance against that. Because, again, a lot of killers could stomp on, like, groups of, like, not-so-great survivors, but then get shit on by good survivors. And in my opinion, that means that they're not a good killer, right? If you're only good against average survivors, then that means that you're not actually good, you know? If you guys want, I can maybe try to make a tier list at some point where I just assume every single person in the game is average skilled, and then I can make a tier list based off that. That sounds like an interesting tier list. I can try to do that at some point if you guys really want. But for now, this is what I got. Feel free to leave your comments. Feel free to give me your thoughts on what you guys think, on what you guys think I got wrong, on what you guys think I got right. You know, I'm always curious to see what people think. And there you go. That's my tier list. That's my content. This video probably ended up being way too fucking long. But thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys maybe learned a thing or two. Or even if you didn't learn a thing or two, hope you at least were entertained by my opinions. Because I think at the end of the day, that's really all I can ask for, is being entertained by my opinions. Hope you guys have an awesome rest of your night. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to leave the video a like if you enjoyed it. Leave it a dislike if you hated it too, even. I don't really mind. Subscribe to the channel as well if you want, because I'm going to have more content. And also stop by my live stream. I'm live on Twitch 6 nights a week over at twitch.tv/OhTofu. So feel free to stop by and say hello. And thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys have an awesome rest of your night. I'm out of here. See ya. Take care. See ya. See you later. See ya.